Shikuki, start with an Izakaya and make everyone cry. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 Remarks on the launch. It's almost time for the new book to be put on the shelves. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank all the handsome and beautiful readers. It is your support that makes the results of this new book not so ugly. In fact, not many people are writing novels with a theme of shikoku anymore, and even if someone is writing them, there is basically not much new ideas. Therefore, when I first started this book, I was still very unsure, but in the end I persisted, and this would not have been possible without your support, so I would like to sincerely thank you all. Finally, let's talk about this book again because it is based on the ideas of previous old books. The previous paragraphs, characters, dialogues, etc. will have some impact, and many readers will feel a little uncomfortable after reading it, but I have gradually changed it later, of course. Although a lot of effort has been put into this book, there are still many shortcomings, so I hope readers can bear with me then. It's a cliché, the most important thing about putting it on the shelves is everyone's subscription. I especially hope that readers who like this book will continue to support it and enjoy it. I would like to thank you all in advance. Chapter 77 How could Alice not be surprised by such a situation? Prepared sweet and sour pork ribs soaked in the crystal clear soup. It is like wearing a red coat, constantly shining, although it didn't shine as brightly as the reincarnation spring rolls and shorayu dumplings before. Irina was still amazed by the faint smell of meat in the air. Subsequently, the diner aiming at the largest piece of ribs, pick it up with chopsticks and put it into your mouth. The sour and sweet taste of sweet and sour hits your stomach along the taste buds in an instant, and the crispy and rotten pork ribs are shiny with amber, dry and moist, and the taste is crispy and sweet. The sticky, delicious experience always stays in your mouth, and when paired with a mouthful of soft, glutinous and sweet rice, the taste is even better, so much so that the diner kept praising it. Love it, really. In love, shopkeeper, only your sweet and sour pork ribs can make me like it. Listening to the diner's ridiculous compliments, Zhang Fan, as the owner, just smiled during this period. Which diner is not excited, happy because of his food? Therefore, his ears were about to grow out of cocoons when he heard words like this. However, he was more or less gratified to see that everyone liked his cooking in their hearts. However, for Alice next to her, the sweet and sour pork ribs dish has a deeper meaning. You know, rock sugar will undergo a caramelization reaction after being heated to high temperatures. In the field of molecular gastronomy, caramelization reactions are usually used to color, flavor, change the shape of ingredients, etc. Originally, she thought that many dishes that retained traditional methods would not use so many chemical reactions, but now it seems that is not the case. Zhang Fan, how many chemical reactions does your sweet and sour pork ribs contain? In the end, Alice Nakiri, who couldn't hold back her curiosity, could only blink her eyes and asked Zhang Fan, caramelization, reaction, medra, reaction, esterification, reaction. Zhang Fan took a deep look at Alice and knew that she, who was good at molecular gastronomy, had some radical ideas, so he thought for a moment and continued. Sweet and sour pork ribs are cooked differently in Sichuan, Shanghai and Zhejiang cuisine, but they all require 3 ingredients: sugar, vinegar and cooking wine, and its brown-red color, rich meaty aroma, and sweet and sour taste. It's all closely related to the chemical reaction between these ingredients and the ribs. It's up to you. Could it be that many traditional dishes contain various chemical reactions in molecular gastronomy? When Alice heard this, she became more and more puzzled. Molecular gastronomy, you've only been around for a few years, and you dare to come here to touch porcelain traditional cuisine? This, Alice was immediately speechless and didn't know how to answer. But considering that I am the one who will carry the banner of molecular gastronomy in the future, how can I be timid on this issue? So, her mind was racing, and she counterattacked. Zhang Fan, although molecular cuisine started very late, it has only been a few decades now, but for the ultimate expression of taste and feeling, molecular gastronomy is unmatched by any other cuisine. At the same time, it will also involve many other professional studies. For example, there is a chef over there in England who has been working on how to imagine the taste of food just by listening. So, I think the next few years, even decades later, molecular gastronomy will definitely have a profound impact on this era of cooking. Molecular. This word is very fashionable now, like molecular biology, molecular embryology, molecular medicine. It seems that research in all fields must be named molecules to appear powerful, and even gastronomy is no exception. Some so-called molecular disciplines are just gimmicks. Molecular gastronomy is just right. We study cooking and cooking from the perspective of chemistry and physics, as well as using the latest instruments. I have to say that this is indeed the biggest change in the culinary world. Chefs like Zhang Fan, who are passionate about traditional cuisine, often just want to make the food delicious and rarely study deeper issues. This has great limitations. For example, why does a salad with too much wine and too much vinegar taste bad? Doubts like this do not belong to the scope of culinary research, and this phenomenon has nothing to do with cooking technology. It is purely a chemical problem. But a molecular gastronomy chef who specializes in studying this issue will slowly figure out what is going on, and ultimately rely on the results of his own research to push the entire culinary world forward. It can be seen that molecular gastronomy does have unique value and significance. Alice, do you know how many forms white sugar will take on during the heating process? 3 types? No, I think there are 4 types. Alice replied, wrong. As far as I know, there are at least 6 species. When the temperature reaches 100 degrees, small bubbles will start to appear. Generally, in this state, it can be used to make sugary dishes. Between 110 and 120 degrees Celsius, fine and numerous small bubbles will appear, and the viscosity will appear, which can be drawn and used to make frosting dishes. The viscosity continues to increase at 130 degrees Celsius and can take the form of a ball. At 150 degrees Celsius it will become a hard but easily broken plate. At 160 degrees Celsius it will turn into light yellow caramel, and at 180 degrees Celsius it will completely turn into a strong caramel color, and then the sweetness will completely disappear. After heating white sugar like this at high temperatures, it produces various forms and effects. Actually, the internal molecular structure of sugar has been destroyed. From a professional theory point of view, as you just said, it is an isomerization reaction. A chef who specializes in traditional cuisine, it turns out that during the caramelization reaction, white sugar will take on several different forms, which can surpass her, a chef with a background in molecular gastronomy. In this situation, how could Alice not be even more surprised? Cool. Why do you know so much? Practice. Through continuous practice and summarizing the experience of predecessors. In short, aside from the essence, molecular gastronomy is actually not much different from traditional cuisine. A lot of the theoretical knowledge involved may have been used in the field of traditional cooking very early, just like marshmallows, candied haws, etc. that are common in the streets of China. To a certain extent, they are also molecular gastronomy. Listening carefully, Alice then fell into deep thought. My heart began to feel like a turbulent wave crashing on the shore, and gradually became uneasy. Chapter 78 Unknown Cuisine. People, for the unknown, often fearful, but also curious. The essence of making molecular cuisine is similar to doing various chemical experiments in the laboratory. The raw materials used are no longer food, but a bunch of chemicals. Then, through deployment, processing, polishing, separation, fusion and other means, there will be peach-flavored caviar, wine-flavored pearls, soft stones, chocolate-flavored screws, and eggs made of mango. The appearance of these things is often quite explosive, and even subverts people's understanding of the food world. At the end of the day, I deliberately pursue innovation in the process of developing molecular cuisine. I often think about relying on all theoretical knowledge and the use of various high-tech instruments to create many unique dishes in the world. In this way, we can win people's curiosity and shock about unknown things. However, the application of various techniques and knowledge in molecular cuisine is only a means at best. Well, I'm such a fool. In these years, I have neglected the 2 most important things in cooking, taste and texture. Knackery. Alice, who wanted to understand, sighed deeply. It cannot be denied that she has achieved many amazing achievements in the field of molecular cuisine, but it is precisely because she focused too much on the uniqueness of molecular cuisine that her vision began to become narrow, and it was difficult to integrate her ideas with traditional cuisine. From the fact that she could easily defeat her confidant Kurokabarao when she was young, but was overtaken by him as she grew older, we can know that her strength has stagnated in recent years. In short, she hit a bottleneck and was unable to break it. Alice looked like she had some realization here. Nakari Arena's thoughts became a little complicated. I remember that when I first came to the Izakaya, I was conquered and captured by Zhang Fan with 3 kinds of Western fast food, and he also understood in his heart that even ordinary ingredients can conquer God's tongue as long as they are cooked well. Obviously on Zhang Fan he really has a magic power that can make every diner who is confused wake up. Perhaps it is for this reason that everyone will admire him in their hearts and even have a good impression of him. Any cuisine, what matters is practicality, Alice. No matter how cool your molecular cuisine is, if it doesn't satisfy diners in terms of taste, what's the use? In the end, it will only be a castle in the air, and there is a danger of collapse at any time. Why? I never regard you as my opponent. There is certainly a reason for this because of God's tongue, but the main reason is that your dishes are really nothing but gorgeous and beautiful every time. Irina couldn't help but interject in her eyes. This so-called molecular cuisine is just a little trick to deceive people. Moreover, the production process is much more complicated than many traditional dishes. As a result, it requires the use of some instruments and excessive attention to various factors such as duration, time, temperature, etc. This kind of thing where all the cooking work is left to the machine and then you don't have to do anything yourself is simply an extreme insult to the chef's professionalism. Therefore, she has always been disdainful of molecular cuisine. Irina, what do you mean? Alice was stunned on the spot when she heard Irina commenting on her molecular cuisine like this. Thinking about my past, I finally made a cake for her to taste. As a result, she behaved with the same disdain then as she does now, with the same attitude. Really, you really haven't changed at all. Always act like a condescending queen in front of others and despise this or that kind of cuisine. I don't want to think about whether the noble cuisine you believe in can be recognized and liked by the public. Finally, Alice looked away feeling quite unhappy and said in a cold tone, I don't want to argue with you. Anyway, one day in the future, you and I will definitely have a huge duel match. Then we will have a showdown. Irina's eyes tightened and she said calmly, don't worry, I will defeat you by then. Alice was not to be outdone at this moment. 2 people, although her status as the noble eldest lady of the Nakare family, however, due to their different experiences, their personalities and cooking concepts are also completely different when it comes to cooking. Irina has always paid great attention to taste and texture because of her divine tongue, and she has always focused on the characteristics and practicality of each ingredient, so she sneered at those low-grade civilian dishes. Alice is different. She is actually very tolerant and will not look down on any kind of cuisine. However, due to her background and the influence of molecular cuisine, she has no knowledge of common people's knowledge and traditional cuisine. During the autumn trials and Soma's PK showdown, she had a suspicious look on her face when she heard that the seaweed bento could be used, and she was in a state of complete ignorance, which clearly illustrates this problem, and it is precisely because of her own shortcomings that her molecular cuisine is amazing every time she appears, but she just can't beat others. Yes, that's right, Irina really despises common people's cooking, but this doesn't mean that she knows nothing about civilian cuisine. On the contrary, in the entire Tatsuki Academy, there is probably no one who knows civilian cuisine better than her. Therefore, it is probably because the 2 people's cognition is not at the same level at all, so no matter how hard Alice tries, she is destined to never catch up with Irina. A bottle of peach wine. The concentration is not very high, but the fragrant and sweet smell of wine can spread far and wide at this moment. Mujiazi, who had not yet left, couldn't help but move his nose to smell the fragrance of the wine, and then took a sip in a state of intoxication when it enters the mouth. The faint aroma of wine instantly fills the entire tongue and sprays out of the nose. At the same time, it feels like smelling peach blossoms directly with your nose, but it can be less rich and more elegant. Perhaps it was the combination of the aroma of wine and peach blossoms that made people feel more relaxed and happy, which caused Mujiazi to start to slowly exhale the smell of wine, which seemed very comfortable. After that, she opened her eyes and looked at the 2 eldest ladies of the Nakare family beside her with confusion. It was really hard for her to understand why their relationship seemed so bad. However, it was difficult for her to mediate this kind of thing as a middleman, so she simply pretended to be a pure passerby. Immediately afterwards, she took the initiative to strike up a conversation with Zhang Fan. Owner, I think it would be better for you not to open an izakaya. With your wine-making skills, you will definitely make a lot of money by opening a winery. Chapter 79. Invited to the Spring Fruit Pavilion. Except the chef in this world, winemakers, baristas, food writers, critics, etc. also have very good development prospects. The most typical one is the Hub Food Company of Chiyoda Netsuya in Orai, which directly owns the curry commercial market worth 200 billion per year. and can be said to dominate the entire curry industry. Certainly for Zhang Fan, he runs an izakaya and provides alcohol every day. That's why I had to brew some sake, shochu, fruit wine, red wine. Indeed, as Mujiazi said, with the winemaking technology he now masters, switching to running a winery may not necessarily have no future, but he would never do this. Because he was originally a chef and was born to make a living in the catering industry. Late at night, it's approaching 12 o'clock. The izakaya is finally closing again. Perhaps it's because you and I will have the school opening assessment tomorrow. That's why our ringtone Kobayashi, who serves as the assessor, did not come to the izakaya today because she accidentally got drunk in an izakaya last time. Mikashingo didn't dare to drink too much today, but before leaving, she would often steal a glance at Zhang Fan when she felt that his eyes happened to be looking this way, and they were looking at her unintentionally. She blushed slightly. Shopkeeper, are you free tomorrow morning? Finally, Mujiazi mustered up the courage and asked, in addition to buying ingredients and condiments at nearby vegetable and meat markets and supermarkets, I have time for the rest. Zhang Fan was stunned for a moment, then he looked at Mujiazi for a while, and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Obviously, he didn't quite understand Mujiazi's intention. It's such that, tomorrow, a good friend of mine is coming to Chunggo Pavilion. I was thinking about how I was drunk at your izakaya last time and didn't have time to properly express my gratitude to you. Plus, I shamelessly gave you dinner tonight, so, I just thought that while entertaining my friends, I also hope you can come and cheer me up. After Mujiazi finished speaking, he quickly lowered his head, as if he was deliberately trying to hide his nervousness and expectations from her words. It should not be difficult to figure out that her good friend is Taki Kodazuki, and as the two of them spend more and more time together, they become more and more familiar. Mujiazi clearly regarded Zhang Fan as an important person as Kodazuki Taki, otherwise he would not have invited him to Chunggo Pavilion tomorrow morning. What time is it? Morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, Mujiazi replied in a panic. Good, when the time comes, I just hope that your friend won't dislike me too much. Zhang Fan just nodded and responded with a smile. How could be she? Although she has a bad temper, she is not unreasonable, and shopkeeper Zhang, your personality charm is there. I believe that in the end, she will admire you in her heart just like me. Mujiazi said quickly. In your mind, I turned out to be such an outstanding person. Hearing this, Zhang Fan chuckled. That, shop owner, it's getting late. I'll go to the Huchin Fruit Pavilion first. Mujiazi's little face turned as red as a monkey's butt, and then he found any reason to escape from the izakaya. Seeing this situation, Zhang Fan could only shrug. Obviously, he didn't expect that Mujiazi would be shy so easily. However, knowing that he is still somewhat attractive, he can't help but feel complacent. Mix the remaining low-gluten flour and eggs with water to form a flowing batter, then pour it onto the preheated mold brushed with oil, and when it's almost 80 mature, add chopped cabbage and octopus pieces. After it is slightly set, pour the batter and flip it until it forms a smooth ball, then continue to heat until cooked through. Zhang Fan quickly used a beautiful small box, put 5 oversized octopus balls in them, packaged them and hand them to Arena. For you, there's a little bit of ingredients left. It would be a pity to lose it anyway. I'll just make it into octopus balls for you to eat slowly on the way back. Thank you, Arena originally wanted to refuse because she has her cousin Alice next to her. She has to try her best to maintain her tall image that despises common people's food, but she was helpless. Even if Zhang Fan was making ordinary octopus balls, she still wanted to eat them on the side. Seeing Arena getting a piece of octopus balls before leaving the izakaya, Alice immediately came to Zhang Fan and stretched out her hand. What's wrong? What do you mean? Knowing that Alice must be jealous in her heart, Zhang Fan pretended to be stupid and asked, I want octopus balls too. Arena has it, but I don't. Aren't you so short-minded? Alice pouted and said to Zhang Fan in a depressed tone, you want it too. It's a pity that the izakaya only had so few ingredients left tonight, and they were all gone after making 5 octopus balls. Zhang Fan said with a smile, knowing that she really didn't. Alice was even more puzzled, and a trace of disappointment flashed in her eyes. Okay, just kidding. Although there are no octopus balls left, there's still the layer cake I reserved. After saying that, Zhang Fan delivered a crispy layer cake to Alice Nakiri. Why, really? For me, Seeing a 1,000-layer cake in front of her, Alice was stunned for a moment. Immediately, the depression in his heart was swept away, and the smile returned to his face. If you have a conscience, then I won't be polite. On the way back, Irina is always a little silent. On the contrary, Alice Nakari beside her seemed very excited. She first opened her mouth wide and took a big bite of the millefeuille cake in her hand. As her teeth continued to chew, the sound of click, click, click kept echoing in her mouth. At the same time, the crispy dough and the juicy meat filling of the entire 1,000-layer pancake instantly formed a contrasting taste. The dough was fried until it was charred and crispy, and the rich smoke and the filling feeling inside made her even more intoxicated. So delicious. Why is Zhang, the owner of this Izakaya, so powerful? Finally, Alice said with a satisfied look. Alice, you are in Yuanayu next. What are your plans? Irina looked at Alice for a moment. Originally, as a cousin, she really didn't want to talk to her, but the development of things always exceeded her expectations. Moreover, it is quite strange to say while at the Izakaya, she would occasionally quarrel with Alice, but it seems that under Zhang Fan's influence, their relationship did not deteriorate further, but instead gradually improved. Chapter 80. Another person with the tongue of God. Nothing planned. The only thing I want to do is to defeat you, Alice said without thinking. That is it. This time, Irina's tone fluctuated a little. Alice, you still haven't been able to recognize the reality. In Yuanayu, if you tried your best to defeat me, so what? You must know that even now, I am only at the bottom of the 10 elites. There are 9 other 10 outstanding heroes in front of me. They are the ones who stand at the top of Yuanayu. This, Alice hesitated for a long time, not knowing what to say. Having just transferred to Tatsuki Academy, she may not realize how fierce the internal competition is. Normal competition is nothing more than a match between two people like boxers. The winner gets a prize, the loser admits defeat, and then it is time to continue training, and then PK next time. However, in Yuanayu, it is equivalent to having a piece of cake. If A takes it away, it is gone, and he cannot eat it no matter how hard he tries. Moreover, there is really only one cake, and other external cakes cannot participate, and all resources are restricted. Let's talk about Chuang's Hun in the original work. No matter how talented he is, the top 10 heroes from all walks of life don't take him seriously at all. Even though there is a eating halberd rule, it is solving various conflicts among students. Therefore, theoretically speaking, students can also have a shogi duel with the 10 heroes and then take their place, but rules are rules, and the top 10 also have the right to interpret them. If it hadn't been for the Tatsuki coup caused by Nakari Katsubo in the later period, Soma and others could directly compete for power with seniors such as Shieishi and Kobayashi Ringtong. I'm afraid it will take some time for them to get over it. At this time, seeing Alice fell into silence, Irina could only let out a soft sigh. In fact, no one can predict what the future will be like, but if Alice cannot see clearly the current situation of Yuanayu in time, she will fall into trouble sooner or later. When did I finish the millefeuille? Unexpectedly, at this moment, Alice found that she had eaten all the puff pastry in her hand without even realizing it. She smacked her lips, and after savoring it carefully, she still felt that this 1,000-layer cake was still not enough. So, she turned her attention to the 5 oversized octopus balls in Nakari Irina's hand. Irina, can you give me one? No, Zhang Fan gave it to me, Irina replied forcefully. Then, she seemed afraid that Alice would come and snatch her away. He directly picked up an octopus ball and ate it in front of her. The golden and crispy meatballs are filled with large pieces of springy diced octopus, and are sprinkled with mayonnaise and katsuobushi flowers. It is simply full of happiness. When you eat it, you will feel the soft texture of the noodles, the salty taste of the bonito flowers, and the spiciness of the mustard. In an instant, they all bloom together in the mouth, satisfying the tongue and taste buds. However, before she could recover from the taste of the octopus balls, Alice, who had sharp eyes and quick hands, snatched the octopus balls from Irina's hand. Alice, you? Okay, I'll just eat you an octopus ball, and then I'll make you a dragon song strawberry dish to compensate you. Who wants to eat your technological cuisine? Seeing her retreating figure, Irina was really stunned when she reacted. She wanted to be angry but couldn't. She could only grit her teeth and stamp her feet, and then quickly chased after him. Daytime, dark night, these are two different worlds. Generally speaking, restaurants that operate during the day will basically end their operations for the day before 8 p.m. Those operating at night generally start operating from 5 to 6 p.m. until 3 a.m., or even end before 7 a.m. sometimes. Stores even close at 3 a.m. as usual, but if the diner doesn't leave, for example, he still wants to continue drinking with friends, then the restaurant has to stay open with the diner. Therefore, it is difficult to say when some restaurants open at night will close. However, Zhang Fan's Izakaya strictly abides by the rule of closing after 12 o'clock in the night. After this time, he will basically not entertain diners. Shopkeeper, 2 servings of Wincy tofu, just. When Zhang Fan was busy sorting out today's orders in front of him, a familiar, crisp and sweet voice suddenly sounded. Closing, you can come back tomorrow. Zhang Fan, who was busy at work, seemed to know who was coming by the voice, so he didn't raise his head to meet him, but directly issued an order to expel him. Closing, isn't it closing at 12 o'clock? We are only a few minutes late, you see, Annie. She couldn't help but be stunned when she heard that this Izakaya closed at midnight. Thinking about how eager Nakari Shinichi was to taste Zhang Fan's cuisine, she quickly ordered 2 plane tickets and flew back to Neon Country with her overnight. And as soon as we got off the plane, we didn't even have time to rest, so we hurried to the Izakaya. I finally arrived at the venue, but I was told that it was closed. It's not that I want to drive you away, but I've run out of ingredients today and I can't make Wincy tofu according to your needs. Zhang Fan explained. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. The woman behind Annie began to speak. Her voice seemed a bit weak, but it was also full of deep regret. This voice, Zhang Fan couldn't help but raise his head when he heard this. Standing behind Annie was a mature woman over 30 years old. She was wearing a white crimson kimono with a cherry blossom pattern on it. Her cool makeup and sharp sword-like eyes made people shudder. Maybe it's because he hasn't eaten for many years and only relies on injections of nutrient solution to stay alive. Even though the mature woman in front of her was wearing a wide kimono, she could not hide her slender figure, coupled with the fact that her face was extremely pale and there was no blood at all. We could tell that she was in a state of extreme malnutrition. It is not even an exaggeration to say that a slight breeze could blow her to the ground, but even so, she still has a queen temperament that is unparalleled in elegance and glory. This kind of temperament, it can also be felt intimately in Irina, another member of the Nakari family lineage. How could it be her? Zhang Fan was immediately surprised. He definitely could not have expected Nakari Shinichi's first visit to the Izakaya. His cooking has indeed won Annie's recognition and affirmation, but as Shinichi's secretary, she would not instigate the person who represents the world's strongest person to come to this small Izakaya just because of a Wincy tofu dish. Chapter 81. When he first came to the Izakaya, Manachi Nakari was impressed. Black short hair, those eyes are like the night sky dotted with stars, deep and mysterious. At the same time, if you take a closer look, the delicate face is more like a gift from heaven, glowing with a healthy complexion under the slight light of the light. The impression it gives people is the kind that makes people feel happy when they see it. No matter where he goes, people will be attracted by his handsomeness and gentleness. Nakari Shinichi, after sizing up Zhang Fan, squinted his eyes slightly. His eyes gradually turned cold, and with the aura only possessed by an extremely powerful person, he rushed towards Zhang Fan like a tiger. Zhang Fan's expression changed, and he looked at Manachi without giving an inch. His aura was as strong as a mountain, and the two sides couldn't help but fall into a stalemate at this moment. For a moment, the atmosphere in the Izakaya became weird. You can actually block this momentum, eh? Look of surprise suddenly appeared in Nakari Shinichi's eyes. As the only special executive officer of the WGO Food Organization, as a young woman with the talent of God's tongue, young woman, her innate aura usually instills fear and awe in many people. However, Zhang Fan was able to act so calm and composed in the face of this momentum. Good, as a chef, if you are afraid because of the identity and status of the diners, it will be difficult to achieve success. It's no wonder that your cooking is approved by Annie. In the end, Nakari Shinichi, who took the initiative to calm down his momentum, looked very satisfied. Then with Annie's help, he quickly found a chair and sat down. Judging from what she meant, even if the Izakaya was closed, she still wanted to stay here for a while. Your name is Zhang Fan. Seeing Shinichi, who had just sat down, Zhang Fan asked him his name first, and Zhang Fan couldn't help but nodded. The surname is Zhang. That's a popular surname in China. Nakari Shinichi, who has traveled around the world, seems to have recalled some past events in his mind. Therefore, she shook the folding fan in her hand and chuckled. The cooking environment in China is actually better than that in Neon Country. Moreover, China has thousands of years of civilization and its cuisine is even more extensive and profound. It's Just a pity that not many Chinese restaurants can be rated as stars by WGO nowadays. I remember that there were only 3-star restaurants that were in the category of Chinese cuisine, only, Samaji-sama. There are only 2 companies that can meet these 2 standards. Annie, who was next to her, quickly jumped in. Right, that's 2 houses, Nakari. Shinichi continued without blushing or being embarrassed. Anyway, its quantity should be considered the smallest among the cuisines of various countries in the world. Originally, China is a country full of delicious food. Various dishes can be played with many tricks by many clever chefs, but there are very few who can excel in the culinary world. I think there are certainly foreigners here who don't understand the essence of Chinese cuisine, but I think it's because of the overall environment there, which places too much emphasis on profit and the commercial value behind the food. I have been to heaven. I've also met many excellent chefs. They all have good talents, but they only want to make the restaurant bigger and stronger. Even if I resort to deception, I will never hesitate to promote Chinese cuisine to the world. I don't see this mission or this sense of responsibility in them. So, what do you think? Did you choose to come to Neon Country to run an Izakaya because you were disappointed with China's culinary scene? After saying that, Nakari Shinichi stared closely at Zhang Fan, who was still immersed in sorting out the bills. Good, the business of the Izakaya today exceeded my expectations again. After sorting out the bills, Zhang Fan had a faint smile on his face, as if he didn't take it to heart at all what Nakari Manaji said just now, but in the end, he chose to answer Shina Nakari's question. Chinese food, it pays more attention to practicality and lacks conceptual things. It's the so-called catering culture, so it's embarrassing when it comes to international status. In many people's impressions, Western food is of higher quality than Chinese food. But in fact, Chinese food is not without a catering culture. It has just been simplified over the course of history. After all, in an era of war and hunger, the public was more concerned about filling their stomachs, and when it comes to specifications, I think even you should admit it, sometimes the craftsmanship of a Chinese dish can also be as beautiful as flowers. The details of the ingredient processing of some dishes require special craftsmanship, and even the quality of the ingredients is also extremely strict. A pot of century-old soup, a side of aged ham, behind it, there are so many stories and the efforts of many generations of chefs. Therefore, Chinese cuisine has never lacked innovation, but you want to impose the root of the problem on people's greed. I think this is a prejudice against all chefs in China. In my eyes, the taste and texture of a dish, it's all about the benevolent and the wise. So when the WGO Food Organization has many executives from China, let's talk about why Chinese restaurants have the least number of 3 stars. Hearing this, Nakari Shinichi flashed a cold eye. She never expected that this young chef, who looked to be around 20 years old, would have such sharp ideas. Indeed, the reason why Chinese food has so little international say is not because the executives of the WGO Food Organization are all foreign. Not even a Chinese person. It is inevitable that all executives will be biased when reviewing restaurant standards, let alone expect them to give a relatively fair evaluation. Think about it, if you let the Chinese chefs make the rules, I'm afraid there are a lot of Western foods that they can't stand well. It's really scary. This is a chef named Zhang Fan. It may be even more complicated than what N said. I can't deny it. In the process of evaluating restaurants by the WGO Food Organization, there will be a lot of subjectivity on the part of the executives, but there is a fact that the standards and capabilities of all executives are among the best in the industry. So, I think most of the restaurants that get star ratings are well deserved. For example, in Neon Country, there is a sushi god who has won 3 stars for 12 consecutive years. In order to extract the peak taste of octopus, he often massages it with his hands for 40 minutes. After thinking about it, Nakari Shinichi raised his head, glanced at Zhang Fan, and said calmly, "Then what?" I remember that he seemed to be distressed by making repetitive dishes all the time and completely lost his ability to innovate. At the same time, I was also extremely eager to make something as simple as fried chicken. In the end, I voluntarily chose to withdraw from the star. Right, what? Retired from the star. Upon hearing this, Nagi Nakari was stunned for a moment, thinking that Zhang Fan was playing a big joke on her. Yes, Master Shingi, he did submit a request to voluntarily withdraw from the Star Tour WGO this year. Annie stood up and explained Nakari Shinichi? Question mark? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Dishes That Break the Sky. Ahem, this kind of thing, Nakari Shinichi, who was slapped in the face like crazy, could only pretend to cough twice to relieve the embarrassment in the air. Then, it was obvious that her tone of respect for Zhang Fan became more respectful. Anyway, let me introduce myself first. I am the Special Executive Officer of the WGO Food Organization, Nakari Manaji. I came to the Izakaya this time because Annie said that Terwensi tofu might be able to cure my anorexia. Very unfortunate. The Izakaya is indeed closed tonight, but there are still a few ingredients left. If you don't mind, you can make comet fried rice. Seeing the embarrassed Nakari Shinichi, Zhang Fan held back his smile and said lightly, "Comet fried rice, this? What kind of fried rice is this?" When he heard that he could cook some other dishes, Nakari Shinichi's eyes were filled with excitement and he asked quickly, "Nothing surprising, it's just ordinary vegetable fried rice." Vegetable? What kind of food? Spinach, green vegetables. Nakari Shinichi felt a little disappointed when she heard that it was a cheaper dish than Bunchi tofu. In fact, judging from the normal situation, something like Wensi tofu may not be able to conquer her god's tongue, nor may it make her like it, but in her heart, she can still reluctantly accept this level of cooking. However, who would have thought that after arriving at the Izakaya, he would only be able to taste the cheaper vegetable fried rice? You know, not long ago, she tasted the rarest and most expensive white catfish caviar in the world. The ingredients made her feel particularly disgusted, so how can she be satisfied with vegetable fried rice made of spinach and green vegetables? Okay, just do what you want. However, after thinking again and again, Shinichi finally believed Zhang Fan. After all, you've come here. If you can't even taste a bite of the food, wouldn't it be in vain? Okay, both of you, wait a moment. Finally, under the expectations of Nakari Shinichi and Annie, Zhang Fan finally returned to the cooking table and began to use the few ingredients left in the Izakaya to prepare comet fried rice. I don't know when it started, Nakari Shinichi lost the ability to enjoy food no matter how delicious the food is. Once it reaches your mouth, it tastes like nothing. Later, she became even more frail due to long-term malnutrition, and sometimes it was difficult to even get out of bed. No one can understand how terrible the curse of God's tongue is. I can't even understand why such a simple thing as eating can be so difficult for Shinichi. So in this environment, Nakari Shinichi gradually suffered from depression and anxiety coupled with the fear of death. It always existed in her heart like a haze. Therefore, these various psychological pressures have obviously exceeded the physical torture caused by the curse of God's tongue, and often make her feel collapsed. Sometimes alone, she would contemplate suicide because instead of watching helplessly as he slowly dies due to hunger strike, it would be better to just die. But as long as I think of my daughter Irina, if she can't rely on her own strength in this world to find those dishes that can conquer the tongue of God, and one day in the future, Irina will inevitably follow in her footsteps and die on hunger strike. So, over the years she relied on her strong willpower to survive, and despite living such a difficult life, she still loves food and cooking. I also sincerely hope that before she dies, there will be another dish that can satisfy her and allow her to experience the feeling of having a full meal again. First, wash the 3 ingredients, spinach, green vegetables, and green onions. Then cut the green onions into chopped green onions, and then chop all the spinach and green vegetables. Prepare a pot, add an appropriate amount of water, a little lard and salt in the water, boil it and blanch the chopped spinach and green vegetables. Take it out quickly after half a minute, put it in ice water to cool down, remove it and control the water for later use. Some vegetables contain more oxalic acid, which can affect the absorption of calcium and iron, especially for spinach. For people like Nakari Shinichi who have a bad stomach, blanching it can reduce some irritation. Then, that high-quality Chinese iron pot finally came in handy. First, heat the pan with cold oil, then add half of the chopped green onions into the pan and stir-fry over low heat until fragrant. Then put the rice into the pot, stir-fry the rice with a spatula, pour in the chopped spinach and minced Qingjiang vegetables, and continue to stir-fry over high heat. Crackling. At this moment, it can be seen that it is under the skilled skill of stir-frying the grains of rice in the pot, and the green-tinted minced spinach and green vegetables are all dancing under Zhang Fan's commanding shovel. After a while, A strong aroma of vegetables and rice began to emerge, and it quickly launched an attack like a beast, constantly attacking Nakari Shinichi and Annie. To stir the pot is to be a spoon worker for a Chinese cuisine chef. This is the most basic skill, especially simple fried rice like this requires the chef to have skilled stir frying skills. As for spooning, Zhang Fan is definitely the top chef, so much so that even Nakari Shinichi, who has a lot of experience, couldn't help but be attracted when he looked at it. Subsequently, an even more magical scene is finally coming. Zhang Fan held his breath at first, and then his eyes suddenly tightened, the veins in his arms popped out, and he used all his strength to move the heavy Chinese iron pot upwards in an instant. All kinds of rice, minced spinach, minced green vegetables, chopped green onions, etc. were in the pot. They all flight and began to fall rapidly towards the exquisite plate in the form of a parabola passing by a comet. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. If the faint light on the ceiling panel is the words of the moon, then the fried rice that was thrown out was a comet with a dazzling green light. It cut through the silence of the sky and descended on the Izakaya with its shining beautiful luster. Like a green sword, it pierced the sky, and even blinded the eyes of Shinichi, Nakari and Annie. Boom! After a loud noise, the vegetable fried rice landed perfectly on the plate. At this point, a dish called comet fried rice is completed. Oh, not yet. Zhang Fan has sharp eyes and quick hands quickly scatter the remaining half of the green onion segments gracefully from mid-air. This move was like a stroke of genius, causing the entire plate of comet fried rice to burst with flavor again, and the stronger visual effect and taste directly made Nakari Shinichi dumbfounded on the spot, and his head kept buzzing. Cooking, is it that exaggerated? At this moment, she wished she could take a few steps forward to find out. As a result, he quickly discovered that the comet fried rice on the plate was faintly shining with some scattered small green lights. Then, these lights grew bigger and brighter, until a particularly dazzling green light quickly burst out from the fried rice and illuminated the entire Izakaya. Ah, what's going on? It's okay to have the effect of a falling comet, but it glows. Chapter 83. An unprecedented feeling. God's tongue was conquered again. Finally, the light gradually dissipated. The entire comet fried rice dish was completely exposed to Nakari Shinichi and Annie. Amazing. This dish is amazing. I still can't believe that there are actually glowing dishes. And in the end, with the skill of flipping the pot, the whole fried rice fell on the plate like a comet. This magnificent and magical phenomenon is simply incredible. Looking at the comet fried rice in front of her, Annie couldn't help but cover her mouth. She was so shocked that she couldn't recover for a long time. I remember the last time I showed up at an izakaya, the wenshi tofu I tasted didn't have the same luminous effect as it does now. Yes, the ingredients are simple, but it is indeed a beautiful dish. I don't think there's any chef or cook in the world who can make ordinary fried rice so amazing. Nakari Shinichi was also a little shocked and even more confused. The same kind of ingredients can be cooked in different ways, or the same dish can be made in different combinations of ingredients, but no matter what, this kind of anti-scientific glowing phenomenon is unlikely to happen, right? Subsequently, she came back to her senses quickly holding a small spoon. I couldn't help but take a small bite of comet fried rice. Taking a closer look, the comet fried rice is fried to be fluffy and stretchy, and each grain of rice is still firm, coupled with the sweetness of spinach and green vegetables, and the aroma of lard baked by the heat. It seems that the whole dish encompasses the beauty of the mountains, the simplicity of the farm, and the fertility of the earth. Just smelling it gently with your nose will give you the urge to feast on it. At first, Nakari Shinichi was a little distracted after all, looking at the spoonful of comet fried rice in her hand. She suddenly remembered the feeling of vomiting crazily every time she ate food, but after a short period of thinking, she finally closed her eyes and slowly ate it. Rice in mouth. After chewing it repeatedly with teeth, it is still very chewy, just like those little children playing, jumping in the mouth. This kind of fried rice. Involuntarily, Nakari Shinichi's eyes lit up instantly. She couldn't wait to use her tongue ability to analyze the taste and texture. In her opinion, a bowl of ordinary vegetable fried rice, if it leaves the diner feeling satisfied, it's an excellent bowl of vegetable fried rice. In other words, the evaluation of food should be a subjective description based on personal emotions. Therefore, whether this bowl of fried rice is excellent or not depends on whether it can satisfy your own God's tongue. There is no doubt that the comet fried rice made by Zhang Fan is indeed delicious. The white rice with distinct grains is dotted with green spinach, green vegetables and green onions. Then only salt, lard, etc. are used for seasoning, so the whole dish is absolutely unpretentious, which also sets the tone of vegetable fried rice due to the role of vegetables. The overall color of vegetable fried rice is green if you look at it under the light, It will also reflect the brilliance of the comet, but no ingredient can interfere with the taste of spinach and green vegetables whenever you chew with your teeth. The vegetable juice will be squeezed out by your teeth and quickly seep into every corner of your mouth and anywhere on your tongue at the same time. The sweet smell was enough to make Manaji's eyebrows twitch. Sensing this wonderful and dynamic smell, the steam from the hot stir-frying is completely absorbed by the rice and vegetables, so that you can feel the breath of nature and sunshine in every bite. This is fried rice. It turns out that we use skillful stir-frying to stir-fry the rice until the rice is separated one by one. Then, it is quickly mixed with spinach and green vegetables, and then seasoned with salt. Finally, intense heat is used to simmer the taste and aroma of all the ingredients. Sharp, it's really awesome. The taste of this fried rice dish is not only delicious, the taste is smooth and glutinous like rice, and sweet and fresh like spinach and green vegetables. Even after swallowing it, the faint mellow fragrance can still remain on the lips and teeth, and every time I want to continue tasting it, those crystal clear rice grains make me reluctant to chew it. At this time, there was an unspoken feeling. It began to spread along the rice and into the heart, making Nakari Shinichi exclaim that she was so satisfied. She had to admit, even though I have the power of God's tongue, I can't see the flaws and shortcomings of this fried rice at this moment. How strange. Is this dish so perfect that even God's tongue can't achieve it? Or is it that my God's tongue doesn't work anymore? Snort. I don't believe it. It seems that if you want to find out the flaws in this plate of fried rice, one bite is not enough. At the end of the analysis, Nakari Shinichi, who had only scratched the surface, had reluctance written all over his face. She has eaten countless dishes in her life, but this time she felt a deep sense of powerlessness in front of this comet fried rice. Therefore, she eagerly continued to eat the second bite. Maybe even she didn't realize it, but she was actually conquered by Zhang Fan's comet fried rice after all. Normally, she would feel extremely nauseous if she took just one bite of this kind of food, no matter how delicious it was. However, on this occasion her God's tongue actually adapted to it, and she even thought about taking a second bite. The world is hidden in a grain of rice. Cook time in half the pot as time goes by. There are not many dishes in this world that can make people feel warm, but in the comet fried rice in front of me, the use of various vegetables amplifies this rare warmth, and it quickly emerges in my heart along the throat, esophagus, and stomach gradually. After taking the second bite of vegetable fried rice, Nakari began to enter a fantasy world, but we see that in the vast universe, there is always bottomless darkness. And Nakari Shinichi, who is wandering alone in the universe, can only feel despair and fear in this environment. Suddenly, a comet dragged a long green light across her head. Although the time from the comet's appearance to its fall was quite short, it left her with endless beauty and hope. At last the entire dark universe had gradually became brighter, and a scene of shining stars appeared. Various galaxies are like countless blooming flowers, forming a magnificent picture. At this moment Nakari Shinichi seemed to be unable to control his brain and actually stopped thinking. What's going on? When she came back to her senses, she realized that her originally weak body was slowly changing. A warm breath and a mysterious power are flowing rapidly throughout the body, and the trillions of cells in the body seem to be filled with power in an instant. And this inexplicable feeling actually made her feel very comfortable for a moment, and she couldn't help but moan softly. So hot. My body is so hot. My body is really failing. Chapter 84 Teaching Pulse. A slight breeze begins to appear around Nakari Shinichi. At first, it was very quiet and light, and could only blow the hair in front of her forehead, but as time went by, the breeze became stronger and stronger, until finally it turned into a raging wind. The whirring sound was particularly shocking, like an angry lion that kept roaring, and every strong wind hit everything around Nakari Shinichi mercilessly, and even the windows were hit and made continuous crackling sounds. The entire Izakaya was instantly transformed into a scene of flying sand, rocks, and smoke. Fortunately, this strong wind disappeared just as quickly as it came when everything was settled. And next to her was so shocked by the vision just now that her eyes almost stared to the ground. Just like the commander-in-chief's clothes are torn, Nakari Shinichi will also forcibly activate a skill when tasting delicious food. Teach Pulse. The so-called teaching pulse seems to release one's own spiritual power into the air, creating a very powerful shock wave. Even people who have nothing to do with it will be infected by this mysterious power. In other words, determine whether a chef's food is delicious. Nakari Shinichi, Nakari Arena, Nakari Senziman, Nakari Mune, and other people with Nakari bloodline are actually qualified to review and judge, especially this Nakari Shinichi in front of me. If only she could activate this phenomenon of imparting pulse skills that even shows that the cooking done by this chef is absolutely unparalleled in the entire culinary world today. It is precisely because of this that the WGO Food Organization, represented by her, has become the most authoritative judging agency in the entire culinary industry. Certainly it is not easy to conquer Nakari Shinichi over the years. Countless chefs have created countless rare and delicious dishes, but in the face of the powerful God's tongue, these chefs and their cooking all ended up in failure, although psychologically. And would think that Zhang Fan's cooking would satisfy Nakari Shinichi, but she didn't expect that. Just tasting a piece of fried rice, and only eating 2 bites, Nakari Shinichi could directly activate the skill of teaching pulse. This means that Zhang Fan's cuisine successfully conquered Shina Nakari and the tongue of God. Tasty. It's so delicious. This fried rice dish uses ordinary ingredients, but it possesses a particularly mysterious power that is constantly impacting my God's tongue, making me, I can't do it anymore. I can't bear it anymore. I want to eat again and again. After swallowing and activating the teaching pulse, Nakari Shinichi finally could not conceal his inner excitement and ecstasy, and slowly shed tears of happiness. Her eyes were always fixed on the plate of comet fried rice. After savoring the taste, a faint love shape appeared in her pupils. Obviously, the appearance of such heart-shaped pupils has shown that she has completely fallen. She continued to hold the spoon, and then ate spoonful after spoonful, bite after bite, very crazily, and was even more dumbstruck by such a messy and wild eating look. And if this scene were seen by other executives of the entire WGO, they would probably be shocked. Who would have thought that the person who has always been the most picky about food would end up devouring a portion of fried rice like a dog that has been hungry for days and nights? Tasty. This is an extremely fantasy word for thousands of years. It has been difficult for all humans to give standards and definitions. After all, in the eyes of 1,000 people, there are 1,000 Hamlets. So delicious is a personal perceptual perception that cannot be quantified at all. This seems to be the case. For example, when asked what is the most memorable dish for you, perhaps as a foodie, Kobayashi ringtones will answer, it must be kebabs, smoked beef, milfeu pancakes, extra large octopus balls. But in memory, Nakari Shinichi considers the most unforgettable dish. It must have been a side dish in lunch every Wednesday when she was in kindergarten. It was her favorite at the time. Unfortunately, however, with the emergence of the curse of God's tongue, she could no longer experience the feeling of eating like crazy when she was a child because she loved cooking. Yes, how many years she had been suffering from the torture of God's tongue, and her mind and body were almost to the point of collapse. The feeling of nausea and vomiting as soon as she touched food with her mouth was a painful feeling that stayed with her throughout her life. Compared to others, her wish may not be very complicated. Just thinking about having a meal happily like ordinary people is enough for her to die without regrets. But this world is still too cruel after all. Now she can only rely on injections of nutrient solution every day to barely maintain her life. In the end, her personal fate can only be to continue to hate all food in the world with anorexia, anxiety, depression, etc. In the end, he died slowly in hunger, despair, unwillingness, and pain. In front of you this comet fried rice, but it was like a bright light, giving her a new hope in her dark life. Tell her that the road ahead is still smooth, and she just needs to walk boldly. That combination of spinach, green vegetables and rice, that unprecedented taste experience, was indeed like the sunshine in spring, making her feel particularly warm. It might be an illusion, but it's also possible that it's not an illusion, but something that actually happened. Her physical condition improved quickly after tasting the comet fried rice. That energetic state made her look at least 10 years younger, from a frail young woman to a very energetic girl. Finally, when Shinichi came back to his senses, then she found a whole plate of comet fried rice, which she actually ate cleanly. Even some remaining rice stuck to the plate was picked up directly by her, and she stuck out her tongue and licked it in crazily. Hiccup. It's so comfortable. Think about it, it seems like I haven't eaten such delicious food in a long time. After wiping his mouth and then reaching out to touch his slightly bulging belly, Nakari Shinichi couldn't help but belched. Still not finished, she couldn't help but close her eyes again, wanting to miss the aftertaste of comet fried rice, and even more so, she wanted to deeply imprint the feeling of fullness in her mind. Chapter 85. The strongest chef in the world. Cooking can express feelings. It can also warm someone's life. Despite possessing the God's tongue, Shinichi Nakari was a student. In fact, what I like to do most is to immerse myself in the atmosphere of appetizers, soups, side dishes, main dishes and red wine alone in a high-end restaurant, and taste the chef's intentions with all my heart. When she has time, she will go shopping for a while. If she feels hungry again, she will eat her favorite fried food, wontons and barbecue from the restaurant she is familiar with. I can tell, unlike my daughter who despises common people's food, when Nakari Shinichi was young, she would not have felt that those mediocre shops would make her lose her identity. On the contrary, the smell of human fireworks made her feel another kind of happiness. It's just that this feeling may never happen again nowadays. Even the most exquisite caviar cannot taste delicious to her, so how could the shops and places in these food streets be so discerning to her? I think about it a lot. In time, a dish that I like will appear. So what will it be like? Japanese style wagyu, Australian lobster, Korean ginseng, bluefin tuna, or Iberico ham or caviar. These represent rare ingredients in the world, but I have never really liked them, so I always think that what can completely impress me must be a super dish full of the essence of various ingredients. However, I didn't expect that the dish that would conquer God's tongue in the end would be a vegetable fried rice composed of spinach, green vegetables and rice. Having said this, Nakari Shinichi completely came to his senses. The originally aloof and pretty face suddenly showed a look of respect when it looked at Zhang Fan. Obviously, she was finally impressed by Zhang Fan's talent and cooking. After that, she stood up quickly, bowed to Zhang Fan, and said softly, "Zhang Fan, thank you. It's your cooking that gave me hope again in the darkest moment of my life. You great, really great. I really don't know how to help you. Next to him, he saw Shinichi, who had regained his energy. Annie couldn't help but cover her mouth slightly with her hands and cried. Manaji hurriedly turned to look at Annie, who was crying, and her eyes suddenly filled with mist. Looking back on these years, when she was most helpless in her life, the only person who stayed by her side was always this loyal secretary, so her heart also felt a little hot. Annie, you have worked hard these years. In the end, she could only raise her hand slightly, pat Annie's shoulder, and said softly. When Annie heard this, she immediately shook her head, raised her tears and said firmly, "It's not bitter, compared to the pain you have endured in your life, Master Shingi. What are my efforts and hardships? What's more, without your support and guidance, how could I have become the first-class executive officer of WGO with my own stupid qualifications? So, for you, I am willing to die, Annie. I should be the one thanking you." Taking a deep look at Annie, Nakari Shinichi was filled with relief. Strong wherever he goes, he is respected, especially in this area of cooking where food is paramount. A chef like Zhang Fan, who is young and has superb cooking skills, can even win the respect of Manaji Nakari. After all, she could create a dish that conquered God's tongue with just a few ordinary ingredients. She had to be convinced by this courage and ability alone. It is not even an exaggeration to say that in the future, there may not be any chefs like Zhang Fan in the entire world, and having the ability of God's tongue, I will be destined to be unable to leave Zhang Fan's cooking in the future. Since I left the Nakari family, in the past 10 years, I have been traveling around the world, constantly searching for various cuisines and delicacies. I also met many talented chefs along the way. Their cuisine is not lacking in excellence, nor is it lacking in creativity that makes my eyes shine, but for some reason, no matter how hard they try, they can't conquer God's tongue with cooking, and they can't gain my approval. The food they make is hard for me to swallow every time. Maybe the whole culinary world right now, for any chef, I, Manaji Nakari, am the insurmountable wall. It's just that this high wall was broken by a dish of fried rice here at the Izakaya tonight. So, in a sense, Zhang Fan, you are what I consider to be the strongest chef in the world, bar none. After venting his feelings for many years with Annie, Nakari Shinichi once again set his sights on Zhang Fan, and then truthfully spoke out his inner thoughts. The world, the strongest in the world. Annie, wipe your tears. After hearing that Nakari Shina had such a high opinion of Zhang Fan, she couldn't help but be surprised again. You must know that 3-star restaurants are updated every year in the book, and the chefs of these 3-star restaurants basically represent the top combat power in the world, and among these chefs, none of them can be recognized by Nakari Shinichi. As a result, Zhang Fan was able to win the title of the strongest in the world from Nakari Manaji with just one serving of comet fried rice, and couldn't help but feel a little dazed, as if she was dreaming of a very ethereal dream. But this dream is still too real after all. Well, it's just a shame I can eat this fried rice dish every day, otherwise, one day I will be disgusted by the taste of God's tongue again just like before, although Zhang Fan's cooking has reached a level that even God's tongue has never reached, but God's tongue will also evolve. When one day in the future it grows enough to adapt to the taste of comet fried rice, then she, Shinichi, will still be unable to escape the fate of dying on a hunger strike. But to be honest, this result already made her feel quite satisfied after all. For a dying person, she really has no regrets if she can taste a favorite dish again before she dies. And just think of those chefs whose goal was to conquer the God's tongue in the end. It was because his cooking skills could not keep up with the speed of the evolution of God's tongue, and his mentality completely collapsed. There are even some people who have never been able to return to the kitchen because of this psychological shadow. Therefore, Nakiri Shinichi was very scared in her heart, and at the same time she did not want Zhang Fan to fall into their fate. Chapter 86 Fiercely Chilled Sea Bream Mountain. People with anorexia don't really hate food because they have lost their true love and dislike of food, which is just a scenario-based exposition of their behavior. Sometimes seeing food is like seeing an ordinary object. It seems that it is not something to eat, but something to watch. Sometimes when I see food, I feel queasy, nauseous, and have no appetite at all, just like Arena Nakiri and Manaji Nakiri. They never get along well with food. However, the mentality of eager to taste food but afraid of food makes them often too paranoid about one thing, and even pursue perfection. Therefore, in Zhang Fan's eyes it's completely understandable that Arena looks down on civilian food. He can go to the roadside food stall and eat cheap and ordinary food such as barbecue meat skewers, octopus balls and so on. However, Nakiri Arena cannot do that. She cannot taste those common people's dishes at will like Zhang Fan. The reason for this may be that he was influenced by the extreme education of Nakiri Thistle when he was young, but the important thing is that God's tongue cannot be interested in these ordinary foods. Moreover, the vomiting reaction produced by her body whenever she tasted these dishes actually aggravated her aversion to these foods. In the eyes of many people, Arena despises common people's cuisine. It is simply a manifestation of unruly, willful, and arrogance. But only by truly understanding God's tongue and anorexia can we understand that everything behind it has pitiful reasons. Same with Arena. Of course, Nakiri Shinichi, who possesses the tongue of God, also behaves particularly paranoid and extreme in some aspects. She once believed that all food in the world was sinful in the past. When she saw a cake shop, she would walk straight in, but until one day, she found that even the food she liked became less and less wanted to eat. At that time, even if you realize the seriousness of the problem and start forcing yourself to eat, it will not help in the end. As long as she took a bite of those disgusting meals, they would slowly crawl into her throat like countless small insects, occupying her empty stomach and her increasingly thin body. So gradually, Shinichi became disgusted with ordinary food. She began to search frantically for dishes that would taste delicious to her divine tongue, but she searched and searched, and finally she found that there was no dish in the world that could completely satisfy her. Therefore, she knew very well that when Zhang Fan's comet fried rice appeared and successfully conquered her, her mentality would only become more paranoid because she will rely heavily on Zhang Fan. Unlike the cooking he makes, maybe one day in the future, if she can't taste the food he made, she will be in pain and feel even worse than death. In other words, how much she hated cooking in the past. So from now on, how dependent she became on Zhang Fan. Do not worry, except comet fried rice. I believe there will definitely be many more dishes in the future that will satisfy your God's tongue. If you feel hungry, you can come to the Izakaya at any time, and I will prove it to you with my actions. There is no other chef in this world who can completely conquer God's tongue except me. Seeing Shinichi's worry, Zhang Fan just smiled lightly and replied firmly. After hearing these sonorous and powerful words, Nakiri Shinichi couldn't help but trembled, looking at him with burning eyes, feeling inexplicably moved in her heart. Okay, then I'll look forward to it. Let's see how far your cuisine can go under the influence of God's tongue. After saying this, she turned around and left the Izakaya. When Annie saw this, she was a little confused. However, she didn't think much about it. After asking about the price of the plate of comet fried rice, she quickly paid for it. Then he quickly walked anxiously and left the Izakaya behind Shinichi. Finally, as the two left this Izakaya with delayed opening hours is finally closed, Ling Dong successfully signed in once. Ling Dong, congratulations to the host for getting a new special recipe, fiery chilled sea bream. It's actually this kind of food. Listen to the sign-in reward given by the system. It was actually another dish from the Little Master of China, and it was a hot and fresh sea bream dish that was contrary to the reincarnation spring rolls. Zhang Fan couldn't help but be stunned. The so-called strong iced sea bream, as the name suggests, is thinly sliced real sea bream fillets attached to ice cubes in the plot of the original work. Ren also used a beach and serious ice blade to use the cold air of the ice blade to bring out the flavor of the snapper. The visual effect of the scene is quite shocking. The reincarnation spring roll last time was an extremely hot dish, so this time the strong chilled sea bream is an extremely cold dish. This hotness and coldness, this familiarity and life, are really two opposite realms brought to the extreme. Therefore, to a certain extent, the deliciousness of this hot and fresh sea bream dish is definitely comparable to the reincarnation spring roll. Zhang Fan was naturally a little excited to get this recipe, but I was thinking about going to Harago to eat tomorrow morning to attend the reception hosted by Kikuchi Kato and Taki Kadazuki. He quickly stopped smiling, went to wash up, and then fell asleep at this point. There is nothing more to say about the Izakaya. Early morning there is a cooking room similar to a laboratory in Tatsuki Academy. Alice Nakari started making molecular cuisine, but I saw that she first separated the strawberry pulp from the leaves, picked off the leaves, cut the pulp into small dices, added fine sugar and stirred it to make strawberry jam, then blanched the leaves, add a strawberry flavored cream liquor, sprinkle with icing sugar, cool and dry, then put the sliced pulp into a vacuum bag, heat it for 10 minutes, put it into a blender, add milk, light cream, condensed milk, and soak gelatin slices in sequence, beat evenly, sieve, and cool. Pour it into a siphon bottle, fill it with compressed nitrous oxide, press it, and foam it. Shake evenly and then pour into a dewar bottle filled with liquid nitrogen to get extremely fluffy strawberry ice cream. Finally, beat evenly, sift, and cool with ice water. Then add the ingredients and pigments, pour the strawberry powder into it and stir. And then you can see the strawberry pulp gradually solidifying into a slurry-like syrup. After the water dries, immediately afterwards remove a small piece of syrup, blow it into the shape of a strawberry like you would blow candy, then use scissors to cut the long strips into small pieces, and melt them under a food heat lamp. Finally, use glass blowing to blow out the strawberry shell to complete the assembly. In this way, the fake strawberries made of real strawberries are complete. Chapter 87: The most complex molecular cuisine, Longian strawberry. Cold. This is the finished Longian strawberry. Can you help me taste it and see if there is anything that needs improvement? Alice said softly as she handed the prepared dragon song strawberry to Kurakabaryo, who had dark circles under her eyes at first glance. Longian strawberries are the same as real strawberries, but if you look closely, you can still find that the textures are completely different. At the same time, even though strawberries are used as ingredients, the result is also strawberries. But after dozens of complicated processes, this Longian strawberry dish can be said to have become the most complex molecular cuisine dish in the world. Gelatinization of gelatin, whipping in siphon bottles, freeze drying with liquid nitrogen, slow cooking at low temperature. Not only that, the combination of traditional crafts such as sugar blowing and laboratory like precision equipment made Kurakabaryo, who is about to taste it, feel that the small strawberry on the plate was extremely complex. Puff, but see, when karaoke is cool, gently crack open the strawberries with a small spoon. Suddenly, the brittle sugar shell on the outside was shattered, as if the most perfect work of art had been destroyed. Immediately afterwards, Kurakabaryo quickly poured a spoonful of hot strawberry jam on it. This combination of cold and heat is what truly brings the visual effect of Longian strawberry to a shocking state, and his skillful pouring action showed that he had tasted Longian strawberry more than once. Finally, in Alice's expectation, he slowly opened his mouth and tasted it. One taste, it's strawberry, but the sweetness is better than strawberry, and it immediately explodes in your mouth. As for the taste, it is definitely the ice and fire of 196 and plus 99. Acid, sweet, ice, cold, crisp, soft. It also feels like popping candy. All kinds of unexpected flavors are concentrated in a small strawberry. It's so cool to Kurakaba that I can't use any words to describe the impact of this taste on my tongue. Miss Alice, your dragon song strawberry is a lot better than the previous ones. Finally, Kurakabaryo swallowed, but continued expressionlessly. But with this level of cooking, I guess it may not be possible to satisfy Miss Arena. I am very sure of that. She is a monster with a divine tongue. She will not be satisfied with whatever I cook. While talking, Alice actually packed up the remaining Longian strawberries, and then said calmly to Kurakabaryo, I just want her to understand, now, I am no longer the person who only makes snacks and cakes. After saying that, She hurriedly left the cooking room. Seeing Alice like this, Kurakabaryo could only sigh lightly. At the same time, in a quiet courtyard of Tatsuki Academy, there are carved beams and painted buildings everywhere here, and you can stroll among the green flower paths and see precious flowers and rare plants as far as you can see. Not far away, the Kwashu Creek meanders under the corridor, and then flows into a small pool, just like a fairyland, which is intoxicating as usual. Nakari Irina wanted to try various dishes, and now, what was placed in front of her was the last dish of oyster porridge in this bowl of porridge. If you look closely, you can see a few chopped green onions, a few chopped green corianders sprinkled on the bowl, and occasionally a few naughty oysters, with plump and milky white bellies, swimming in the porridge. Wisps of aroma, rising from the bottom up, permeated the entire courtyard, so greedy that even Feishasha next to it felt like he was getting drunk. Snort, snort. Afterwards, Irina took a bite. It's more like seafood porridge than oyster porridge. In addition to oysters, there are also seafood products such as scallops, conger eels, shrimps, etc. There are even dozens of ingredients such as carrots, lilies, wolfberries, dried walnuts, etc., which are put into a clay pot to cook. They are cooked in cold water and high heat for 4 hours until the bone marrow seeps out from the seams of the bones. The concentration of the soup reaches milky white color. Overall, it tastes delicious, both sticky, dense, soft and smooth, and overflowing with fragrance. But it was obvious that this kind of oyster porridge still could not satisfy Irina Nakari. One comment of unpalatable made the chef who carefully prepared oyster porridge possibly end his career as a chef in the future. It tastes really bad. Why can't those famous chefs be like Zhang Fan? With just a few simple ingredients, you can make a dish that even God's tongue will find amazing. Walking out of the courtyard, Irina said with a depressed expression, I don't know if it was because of Zhang Fan's cooking, or because her divine tongue has become more picky now. Whenever she tastes various dishes, she can't help but think of those reincarnation spring rolls, Shenglong dumplings, Buddha jumping over the wall. Indeed, during this period of time, Irina seemed to have become dependent on Zhang Fan's cooking. It's just that she doesn't seem to be able to truly realize this. She just thinks that everyone's cooking is not as good as Zhang Fan. Fei Sheng, what other work arrangements are there next, Miss Irina? All your work is over today, Nito. Hisako, who was following closely behind him, couldn't help but cover his mouth and chuckle when he saw that Irina had been saying Zhang Fan to the left and Shoryu dumplings to the right recently. Is it all over? It's rare to have a whole day that's so relaxing. Knowing that there was nothing to do today, Irina couldn't help but take a deep breath. Then, she finally couldn't hold back her restless heart, and carefully observed her surroundings. After finding no one there, she whispered in Feishasha's ear, the latest second volume of the Restoration Warlock's Life. Just bought it, Nito. Feishako quickly continued, Miss, just put it on the sofa in the living room of the villa. Really? Upon hearing this, Irina's bright eyes lit up instantly. She couldn't help but stretched out her hand to pat Feishasha's fragrant shoulder, and said with a smile, it's been really hard on you these days. If there's nothing else, you should go and rest. Okay, miss, I won't disturb you anymore. Knowing that Irina was anxious to go back and read those pure comic books, Hisako nodded knowingly. Returning to the villa, Irina eagerly opened the door. However, the first thing she saw was her cousin Alice Nakari, sitting on the sofa reading a comic book, and the book she was reading was Restarting the Life of the Recovery Warlock. Irina, where have you been? Why are you back now? Moving away from the comic book, Alice raised her head slightly, blinked and asked Irina, Alice, how? Irina definitely didn't expect Alice to appear here, but when her eyes looked at the comic book, she suddenly turned red. Chapter 88 Dimensionality Reduction Strike. Alice Nakari stood up, putting aside the comic book, The Revenge of the Stick, in his hand. He looked at Irina with a somewhat baffled look. Why did you break into my villa without permission, and actually read this kind of comic book? At this moment, Irina's pretty face was so red that it was almost burning, and she said with embarrassment and anger, comic book? Isn't this yours? Could it be that you are so secretive every time because you are afraid that I will know that you like these things? Alice was stunned for a moment, then understood something and couldn't help but chuckle. Nonsense, how could I like this, that, those? Our all Feishak. Yes, they were all dropped by her accidentally. Irina, who felt uncomfortable looking at her, could only reply with quibbles. From Feisha. Alice chuckled and nodded. I understand. I understand. Seeing her like this, Irina was filled with hatred. In the end, she couldn't stand her anymore, so she could only quickly put away the comic book. Then, she sat on the sofa angrily. The distance between her and Alice seemed to be as far as a galaxy, which was quite awkward. The atmosphere is slightly depressing. The two looked at each other, and Alice looked away unnaturally at first. Tell me, what do you want to do when you come to me this time? Finally, Irina took the initiative to speak to break the awkward atmosphere. Here, maid. Some dragon chant strawberries, thinking of letting you help me taste it and see if there's any room for improvement. After speaking, Alice opened the exquisite box on the table, and the exquisite strawberries were exposed in front of Irina. Did you really make Longines strawberries? Looking at those strawberries, Irina felt speechless for a while. I secretly thought that this Alice was exactly the same as before, always liking to be more serious about little things. At first, she wanted to refuse, because now she really has no interest in the molecular cuisine that Alice is doing, but on the one hand, she was really afraid of Alice's stalking character, and on the other hand, she was also curious about how much progress she had made over the years. So after thinking twice, she picked up a small spoon and smashed a strawberry, then poured a spoonful of strawberry jam on it and tasted it carefully. Longines strawberry. The earliest one came from a WGO 3-star restaurant in Neon Country. The most amazing thing about the production process of this dish is that it cooks at temperatures from -196 degrees Celsius to 99 degrees Celsius, from low temperature to high temperature, and then from high temperature to low temperature at the same time. The lifelike appearance of the strawberry was crushed on the spot, creating a world of ice and fire. These unique features are enough to explain this Longines strawberry dish. Although it is from real strawberries to fake strawberries, after dozens of processes, it seems to have returned to the starting point. But I have to say that this is indeed a very creative molecular cuisine. As soon as she entered the mouth, Irina, who had the tongue of God, felt that it was sweet. A temperature difference of nearly 300 degrees gives the whole Longines strawberry a particularly wonderful taste. Different sensations, such as hot and cold, crispy and soft, sweet and sour, can all reverberate in your mouth at the same time. All kinds of wonderful freshness and sweetness can still leave people with endless aftertaste even after swallowing. How about it? What's your opinion of this kind of cuisine? Seeing Irina finally taking a bite, Alice asked anxiously and expectantly, It's okay. The taste changes a lot, but it's not amazing. After opening her eyes and thinking about it carefully, Irina replied truthfully, Alice, cooking is nothing more than based on ingredients. Choose the appropriate cooking method, match it with the appropriate condiments, arrange it on the plate appropriately, and enjoy it in the appropriate environment. So, although I can't say I like your molecular cuisine very much, I don't actually have much disdain in my heart. At least this way of cooking using theoretical knowledge and high-precision instruments is much better than ordinary people's cooking. However, your cooking often has many fatal problems. Although it's molecular cuisine, it may not be too particular about ingredients, but you obviously went too far. Let's talk about this Longines strawberry dish. You beat it into paste and froze it at ultra-low temperature. This approach will completely destroy the unique ingredients, texture and flavor of the ingredients themselves. Although the strawberry was finally made into its original shape, it was just an appearance. The taste and freshness of the strawberry itself no longer existed. In other words, many of your actions are just taking off your pants and farting, which has no practicality at all. Hello, Irina, I'm not here this time to be lectured by you. Every time I cook food for you with good intentions, but you always come to comment on the shortcomings of the food. Have you ever thought about my feelings? Alice gritted her teeth in anger when Irina finally commented on her cooking. If at this time she could use Shokugeki to compete in a PK duel, she could not wait to have a showdown with Irina right now. Feelings? That's ridiculous. If you are at this level, then I would advise you to just drop out of Yuanai. Cooking like yours will only become a stepping stone for others to trample on. Me. Alice was so stunned that she couldn't say a word. If you don't understand, just come to the kitchen with me. After saying that, Irina got up and left the villa, heading towards her exclusive kitchen behind her. Alice Nakiri, after calming down a little, knew that her strength was indeed inferior to hers. At the same time, she also wanted to see what kind of food Irina wanted to use to convince her. Therefore, she quickly followed closely behind her with anxious steps. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Finally, in the kitchen when Irina went to open the steamer, a mighty and domineering red dragon slowly rose up in the mist. Such a shocking sight was not inferior to Alice's previous molecular cuisines, so much so that she opened her mouth so wide that she could almost fit an egg in it. Ha! Dumplings, dumplings. Went to heaven, ah! Why did you only raise your tail in the end, as if you were standing? Although the red dragon failed to really fly into the sky in the end, it was still an eye-opener for Alice. Eat it and see. I believe that only after you taste this Shenglong dumpling, you will understand what your problem is. Seeing Irina's serious expression, Alice couldn't help but be startled. Then, driven by curiosity, he started to pick up a small shrimp dumpling with chopsticks and took a bite. Oh, this dumpling. Immediately, Nakari Alice was completely shocked. At this moment, she knew that she had really lost, and she had lost completely. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89 Kikuchi Sanago's Friend, Kadazuki Taki. Chungo Pavilion, a luxurious private room. Kadazuki Taki looked at the empty seats over there, obviously starting to feel impatient. Kakayachi, who are you waiting for? Next? To him, Muji Uzuhingo seemed to be absent-minded, his eyes always staying in front of him, as if he was expecting someone to appear at the Chungo restaurant immediately. Taki, I'm very happy. It seems like it's been a long time since we got together like this. Finally, Muji Uzuhi turned his head slightly, glanced at Kadazuki Taki and couldn't help but chuckle seeing her answering the wrong question. Kadazuki Taki could only roll his eyes in frustration. Ever since she came to Chungo Pavilion early this morning and started visiting her friend, she often felt something was wrong. It was obviously a banquet for him, but in the end, there was still a vacant seat, and this seat was the most important host and guest position. In other words, this person's status was higher than hers, and he even made Muji Uzuhi wait willingly. Who is it? It actually makes Muji the fruit of the garden. So he is willing to do so involuntarily. Kadazuki Taki had doubts and a deep expectation in his heart. At this time Zhang Fan, who abided by the agreement and came to Chungo Pavilion on time, opened the door and came in. Speaking of which, this seems to be the first time he has visited the Chungoding restaurant since he came to the world of Shakyujin. No, sorry, right, no, to be more precise, this was the first time he went to another restaurant and the first time he attended a banquet in more than a month after he arrived in this world. Shopkeeper. Zhang, you're really here? Seeing Zhang Fan finally appear, Muji Uzuhi suddenly became ecstatic, and then took the initiative to stand up and come to him. Zhang Fan, who had just entered the Chungo Pavilion, saw the Muji Uzuhi and fruit at first sight. She is very beautiful today. A white dress looks more noble and elegant than usual on her. There is a bow hanging on her waist. When paired with white high heels, it is very fascinating. At this moment, Zhang Fan realized that this Muji Uzuhi was also a woman with both beauty and talent. Kikuchi, you look really beautiful today. Finally, Zhang Fan withdrew his gaze and smiled softly. Why, yes, really. When Muji Uzuhi heard this, he was so embarrassed that he quickly touched his hot face, and felt a pounding feeling in his heart. Then she pretended to be calm, and then said, I have reserved your position for you a long time ago. You come with me, okay, I'll help you. So, Muji Uzuhi led Zhang Fan to the luxurious private room. After entering the private room, Muji Uzuhi took the initiative to move the empty chair, turned around and said to Zhang Fan, please sit down. I'm just here to attend the banquet. There's no need to be so enthusiastic, right? Seeing Muji Uzuhi being so enthusiastic and polite to him, Zhang Fan found it difficult to adapt, but in the end, he didn't say much, but took Muji Uzuhi's kindness and sat down directly. Unexpectedly just sat down. The atmosphere in the entire private room instantly became extremely cold, but he saw Taki Kikuzuki next to him. His eyes were a bit fierce, staring at Zhang Fan closely. If looks could kill, Zhang Fan would have died at least 100 times in her hands originally. Chungoding's banquet today was just to entertain him, but it turned out that the extremely handsome man in front of him seemed to be the protagonist. In addition, his relationship with Muji Uzuhi is still a bit unclear. This kind of situation naturally aroused the suspicion that Kadazuki Taki had evil intentions. Taki, let me introduce you. This is Zhang Fan, the owner of the Izakaya next door. He comes from China. Although he is easygoing and gentle, his cooking skills are recognized by even the first-class executive officer of WGO. Seeing Kadazuki Taki's hostile look, Muji as he quickly introduced Zhang Fan to her, the Izakaya next door. "So, you two are now neighbors who see each other every day." Hearing this, Kadazuki Taki suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis in his heart. "I began to feel that the most important and most valued thing about me was about to be taken away by this hateful smelly man in front of me. Yeah, we're not just neighbors, we're great friends." During this period, I often go to the Izakaya to drink and eat. Taki, you don't know how amazing Zhang's brewing skills and cooking are. Just that simple omelette rice, Muju. Zhinguo didn't seem to understand yet, and still muttered to himself, "Stop, everyone is here, then. It's time to present the food you want to serve me." Kadazuki Taki, who became more and more annoyed as he listened, quickly interrupted Kikuchi. "Oops, look at my memory, Muji, who was about to praise Zhang Fan in front of Kadazuki Taki, quickly patted his forehead. Finally, she called the staff of Chungo Pavilion and brought all the dishes she had prepared one by one in order. French cuisine. Its influence in high-end catering is indeed very strong. Many people would think of taking someone to an expensive French restaurant for a date, a banquet with distinguished guests, or a family dinner including state banquets in various countries. French food is also the most influential cuisine. Today, Taki Kadazuki finally made a trip to the Chungo Pavilion, and Zhang Fan also arrived, so Kikishin Ko actually cooked a table full of French dishes. If you look closely, there are sherry wine, salads made with various vegetables, fruits and seafood, a delicious bouillabaisse, beef, tuna, salmon, and raw tartar mixed with avocado, onions and other spices. Beef, onion soup. Finally, there is the most exquisite caviar and foie gras. Of course, for French cuisine, a formal meal will usually have 6 or 7 courses, but these dishes are not served together, but one by one, so it takes almost 2 hours to eat a French set menu. Kikuchi, your cooking skills have improved a lot. Recently, I heard that your Chungoding restaurant is aiming for 2 WGO stars. At this moment, as he was recalling the aftertaste of the French dishes just now, Taki Kadazuki couldn't help but raise his head and ask Kikuchi Chingo, aspiring to 2 stars, I have failed this year. Speaking of this, Muji looked a little disappointed. I put in a lot of effort, but in the end, I couldn't satisfy the WGO first-class executive officer just in terms of cooking, although, under Zhang Fan's influence, she has begun to not take these honneurs so seriously, but every time she thought about it, she still felt a little unwilling to accept that the French dishes she had made at the time were not approved by Anne. Chapter 90. The stars are shining brightly, and a new era is about to begin. Tatsuki Academy, the location for the entrance examination for new students. Many new students have gathered here early. Of course, strictly speaking, they are not students of Tatsuki Academy, but only chefs with entrance examination qualifications. 5 minutes. I need you in 5 minutes. With these ingredients, I can make a dish that satisfies me. Kobayashi Gentian, who served as the assessor, said calmly, "What, can you cook something in 5 minutes, and the ingredients are only eggs, bacon, flour, green onions, salt, and soy sauce. How are we going to make this? Even the simplest egg fried rice dish takes more than 5 minutes, right, mother? I want to go home." This UI was really scary. What kind of cooking questions are there in the test? As soon as he finished speaking, the entire examination room was completely blown away. The chefs who came to take the entrance examination started talking in low voices, and some even squatted on the ground in panic, holding their heads, with a look of despair on their faces. IMHO, if you can't cook it in 5 minutes, then you are all trash and you are not qualified to enter Tatsuki Academy. Looking at the group of chefs with cold eyes, Kobayashi Gentian immediately pressed the time pocket watch in his hand and said, "The assessment has begun. There are still 4 minutes and 55 seconds, 54 seconds, 53 seconds. What is this the beginning? It's over, it's over. What should I cook?" In an instant, all the chefs present were in a mess and busy. Finally, as the tasting of the last dish came to an end, Kobayashi let out a deep sigh. When the 10 elite council was convened, she was able to withstand the pressure from Si Yingshi and refused to serve as Yuan Yu's entrance examiner, but in the end, she accepted the job. No way, who calls himself a foodie? There was food to try, and she certainly didn't want to miss this opportunity. As a result, the results of the assessment were very disappointing to her. Oh, the level of these chefs is too bad, isn't it? My expectations were really in vain. I think if this year's freshmen from Toy were all at this level, then this year will be Toy's worst year. After talking to himself, Ringtone Kobayashi had no choice but to put away his disappointed mood and left the examination room. In fact, maybe even the current Kobayashi Gentian couldn't predict it. The 92nd class of UNIU freshmen is precisely the class with the strongest overall strength in UNIU's history this year, not to mention the two eldest ladies, Nakari Irina and Nakari Alice. There is also Yukihira Soma, the son of Seiba Joichiro, as well as Kurakaba Ryo, Hayama Ryo, Tokimi, Tadakuro, etc. Waiting for so many geniuses. They all possess various unique skills and have made extraordinary achievements in their respective fields of expertise. Even in the later stages, they relied on their extraordinary strength to knock down all the top 10 heroes and completely changed the political structure of Tatsuki Academy. So much so, when facing the phenomenon of shining stars, even the commander-in-chief couldn't help but sigh that this is the era of jade. It can be said that the students of the 92nd class not only represent the future of Tatsuki, but also are pioneers who have profoundly influenced the entire cooking era. Of course, for now, this group of freshmen has not really grown up yet. Therefore, it is reasonable for Kobayashi Gentian to feel disappointed. Time fleeting. It's time to end the Spring Fruit Pavilion banquet. Mukazi, thank you for inviting me to this banquet today. You can tell from those French dishes that you have a really good friendship with that Kadazuki Taki. It would be a very happy thing to have a close friend like Taki Kadazuki in this world. Even I would be a little envious. Zhang Fan, who was standing at the entrance of Chungo Pavilion, said softly before leaving. Shopkeeper Zhang, can't you stay a little longer? But Mujiazi Iwanguo's eyes were full of reluctance. No, you two friends are getting together again. How can I have the nerve to disturb you? After Zhang Fan finished speaking, he waved his hand to say goodbye, and then left the Chungo Pavilion under the watchful eyes of Mujiazi Iwanguo. Although the Izakaya and Harugoto were close together, Kikuchi seemed to be separated by life and death. This made Taki Kadazuki behind him, who had not yet left, grit his teeth angrily. Big-breasted monster, everyone has left, and you are still having sex there. After that, she walked behind Mujiazi and walked around her back with her hands open. Then he held up Mujiazi Iwanguo's chest with force and said angrily, "Ah, Taki, you're here again." Kikazi hurriedly covered his chest, and then kept some distance from Taki Kadazuki in fear. Taki Kadazuki, whose figure was as flat as an airport, had always been particularly jealous of Kikuchi. In addition, Mujiazi has a cowardly personality and is easy to bully, so she often threatens and ridicules her, and even calls her a big-breasted monster. Say it. What happened? The review requirements for those WGO executives that strict. With your ability, you can't even reach the goal of a 2-star restaurant this year. Later, Taki Kadazuki, who knew that the joking had stopped, returned to the private room, picked up a glass of red wine named Lafayette alone, and sipped it leisurely. But there were thousands of thoughts in his mind. She never thought that Mujiazi, who was called a monster who can compete with professional star chefs even though he is young, would fail to reach the 2nd-star level. Taki, the WGO executives are a bunch of monsters. It's really difficult to satisfy them with cooking. Mujiazi said helplessly. Yeah, even you can't help it. It seems that a chef like me is wishful thinking if he wants to conquer those executives. Afterwards, Kadazuki Taki twirled his wine glass and fell into deep thought. Actually, just now, you should have a good relationship with that shopkeeper Zhang, instead of always being hostile to him. Speaking of it, you may not believe it, I actually saw with my own eyes that shopkeeper Zhang's cooking maiden, the first-class executive officer of WGO, Cry. You also know that in the entire WGO food organization, the first-class executive officer is second only to the only special executive officer. Even the dishes I worked so hard to make are worthless in front of her. As a result, such a feared executive was easily conquered and captured by the dishes prepared by shopkeeper Zhang. Looking at Kadazuki Taki, whose face was unusually heavy, Kikuchi had no choice but to explain. Is he really that powerful? Upon hearing this, Kadazuki Taki was slightly surprised. Chapter 91. Annie, I can't stand it anymore. Tonight Izakaya, Business is good. Many regular customers who live nearby are here on time as usual, tasting their favorite dishes and drinking their favorite wines. At this moment, in front of Kobayashi Gentian was a round celadone bowl filled with square tofu. No, this is not tofu. Instead, it's something similar to almond-flavored cheese. Almond tofu. Looking closely, you can see that the edges of the tofu may not be very smooth and have unusually sharp edges, but this also illustrates Zhang Fan's strength when cutting the almond cheese at the same time. There are some tofu fragments scattered in the porcelain green sugar water on the wall of the bowl, like broken snow, which looks particularly beautiful. When Kobayashi Gentian saw this, he quickly picked up the spoon and touched it gently. As a result, the elastic tension on the surface of the tofu caused the spoon in her hand to bounce away and fall to the ground. Huh? Is this so soft? Seeing the spoon falling to the ground, Xiaolin couldn't help showing surprise. Helpless, she could only hold another spoon and began to use the tip of the spoon to cut a small opening. After breaking through the elasticity of the tofu, the almond tofu was scooped out. Finally, this small piece of almond tofu was slowly eaten into her mouth. Slip, sweet, soft. The tofu cubes were half sucked and half slid into the mouth, lubricated by the sweet sugar water. It leaves a fine, sandy texture like mousse particles in your mouth at the same time. The aroma of almond milk quickly spreads everywhere on the tip of the tongue until it is completely enveloped by the warm mouth. Then, he bit it with his white teeth, and the strong almond fragrance burst out instantly with a strong milky aroma as the base. The almond aroma begins to become more fragrant, but the slight bitterness of it is not revealed at all. Finally, from the base of the tongue upwards, the fascinating fragrance lingers in the nose. There's no comparison. It's really incomparable. The store owner and the chefs who came to take the entrance examination, their cooking is too bad. It feels worse to me than the bowl of almond tofu you made. After swallowing, Xiaolin couldn't help blinking his round eyes and said happily, "What? In the entrance examination this morning, there was no cuisine that you liked?" After glancing at Regent Kobayashi from the corner of his eye, Zhang Fan continued to wipe the kitchen knife in his hand carefully with a knife cloth, and then asked lightly, "Yes, it's all too bad. I just asked them to cook a dish within 5 minutes." However, in the end, less than half of the chefs were able to finish the dishes on time. What's even more irritating is that many of the dishes presented are either burned, undercooked, or one side is raw and the other side is cooked. It all makes me feel terrible. Thinking about it, I was so hot-headed that I accepted this job. At the end of the sentence, Kobayashi couldn't help but think of the dishes that made her feel uncomfortable this morning, and she trembled all over. Then, she could only quickly take a small mouthful of almond tofu and eat it to calm herself down. That's not true, is it? A chef who has passed the Tatsuki entrance examination, in my opinion, they are not all ordinary people. There will definitely be some amazing geniuses among them, probably because you, as the current second seed of the 10 elites, have a clear gap with them. That's why you have the misconception that the qualifications of these freshmen are all mediocre. Taking back the kitchen knife, Zhang Fan thought for a moment and soon understood what was going on. That seems to be the truth. It's really because I'm so outstanding that I look at everyone and think they're ordinary. Upon hearing this, Xiaolin nodded in agreement. Tonight there were a lot of diners in the Izakaya, and it was busier than before. Among these guests, there are naturally many diners who frequent the Izakaya, and there are also some new customers who have never been here before. Perhaps Zhang Fan's reputation gradually spread among the locals, so some chefs, gourmets and other professionals came here specifically to eat and drink. Of course, after Kobayashi Gentian, Tatsuki students also showed up at the Izakaya. The first person who appeared was a person that Zhang Fan had not expected, Nakari Alice. But when she pushed the door open, she quickly flashed after seeing Zhang Fan, and soon came to his side. Then he started walking around him, looking left and right, that particularly curious look in his eyes, as if he wanted to see every part of Zhang Fan's body clearly. "What do I mean when I say you've been hanging around me since you first came in?" Zhang Fan stared at Alice blankly, really not understanding what she wanted to do, and asked depressedly, "Is it the rule in an izakaya that you can order whatever you want as long as there are ready-made ingredients, or whatever you can cook?" Finally, Alice, who withdrew her gaze, couldn't help but raise her head and asked expectantly, Zhang Fan responded softly, "Okay, I want a dragon that can go to heaven." Zhang Fan, Neon country suburbs of Tokyo. A magnificent villa stands quietly on a wide green lawn. The style of the entire building is elegant and solemn, while combining neon Chinese classical and European modern elements, giving people a very unique aesthetic feeling. And here is the branch of the WGO Food Organization. It is also the place where Nakari Shinichi stayed temporarily after arriving in Neon Country. Entering the bedroom inside the villa, the decoration is mainly pure white, and every detail of the decoration is full of aristocratic atmosphere. At this moment on a bed, Nakari Shinichi was about to fall asleep, but couldn't fall asleep. Looking closely, her pretty face was flushed, beads of sweat kept coming out of her forehead, and she felt very hot all over. That strange feeling made her bright eyes like autumn water seem to be in a trance, but there was also a deep humiliation. Well, what's wrong with me, Nakari? Shinichi seemed to be trying hard to calm down this strange feeling, but all the strength has been drained from the body, and it always feels limp, with no resistance at all. Annie, where are you? Quick, the weak voice finally alerted Anne, who was in the next bedroom. She rushed in a hurry, and the first thing she saw was Nagi Nakari on the bed, her face flushed, and she couldn't help being frightened. Samaji-sama, what's wrong with you? I'll get you nutrient solution right now. Thinking that Nakari Shinichi was malnourished again, Annie wanted to turn around and get the nutrient solution, but the moment she turned around, Nakari Manaji, who was lying on the bed, grabbed her hand hard and said, "Annie, I can't stand it anymore." Why? When he looked back, he saw Nakari Manaji's eyes. The love sign appeared again, and Anne was completely stunned. Chapter 92 Arena's Change. Whoosh, glowing, a red dragon began to rise slowly in the mist. Its scales shimmered silver under the light, as brilliant as diamonds. Afterwards, before Alice could come to her senses, a scent unique to shrimp dumplings burst out instantly. Even though the fragrance was a bit light, the temptation far surpassed all the dishes she had ever seen before. It glowing, and this dragon really went to heaven. Seeing this scene, Alice Nakari's eyes widened as she felt both shocked and excited. Sure enough, this kind of cuisine is not on the same level as the shoyu dumplings Arena made last time. It is even more amazing. Afterwards, she couldn't wait to hold the chopsticks. After gently picking up a small shrimp dumpling, he tasted it under Zhang Fan's gaze. First of all, you can feel the delicacy and elasticity of the two different dumpling skins. They slowly break in your mouth, releasing the delicious flavor of the shrimp meat in an instant. Then, the delicious shrimp meat is tender, juicy and delicious. The elastic texture and taste echo each other with the delicate dumpling skin, forming a unique taste experience. Homile. Just say it, how can Arena have the ability to make such delicious dumplings? After swallowing it, Alice couldn't help but exclaim. Until this moment, she was finally able to confirm that this magical dish was definitely not created by Arena, but by Zhang Fan. When Arena gave her a harsh lesson with shoyu dumplings, she had already vaguely felt that something was wrong. Later, after careful thinking, she thought of Zhang Fan. Therefore, tonight she hurried to the Izakaya to see the real shoyu dumplings with her own eyes. It had to be said that Zhang Fan's cooking shocked her every time, and this dish called Shenglong dumplings was far beyond her imagination. It is not even an exaggeration to say that it is several dozens or hundreds of times more delicious than the Buddha jumping over the wall she tasted when she first came to the Izakaya. Then, she still felt that it was not enough, so she quickly picked up another small dumpling and started eating it. Fresh, hand-peeled shrimps are important, but the addition of bamboo shoots and lard will also make the freshness and texture of the whole shrimp dumplings more prominent. Every time you take a bite, you can feel that the shrimp meat is alive in your mouth. It is very smooth and delicious. Oh, this kind of food is so delicious. With her eyes closed deeply, Alice began to feel the shock and deliciousness of the shrimp dumplings with her heart. In fact, there are many chefs who engage in molecular gastronomy. I actually don't like the term molecular cuisine very much. First of all ingredients are made up of molecules. Why should a dish that has changed its molecular structure be called molecular cuisine? Secondly, the so-called molecular cuisine is not about holding a microscope and performing cooking operations at a molecular level. So in Alice's eyes, she prefers to call molecular cuisine modern cuisine. After all, its essence is to use advanced technology and equipment to cook with more appropriate methods on the premise of a better understanding of the chemical and physical properties of the ingredients. Of course, if you think about it this way, there are also many advanced things in modern kitchens, such as freezers, but it is precisely this so-called modern instrument and theoretical knowledge that gives Alice a sense of superiority and vanity in her subconscious mind. She always believed that molecular cuisine must be able to lead a new era of cuisine in the future. Those traditional dishes that are stuck in their ways will slowly be replaced by the power of technology. However, this naive ideal was shaken one after another by Zhang Fan's dishes after she came to Yuan. I really didn't expect that, so some of his dishes go straight to heaven. Next to him, Kobayashi Gentian was silently paying attention to all this. His eyes flashed involuntarily. She often came to the Izakaya, but she didn't realize that Zhang Fan had such interesting dishes that would shine and go to heaven. Zhang Fan, arena, she, after tasting Longjing strawberry, I commented that my molecular cuisine is gorgeous but not practical. What do you think? Is my molecular cuisine so useless? Finally, after finishing her meal, Alice began to express her depression and confusion about the future of molecular cuisine to Zhang Fan. Cooking technology actually keeps improving with the development of history. After taking a deep look at the confused Alice, Zhang Fan continued, just like the shenglong dumplings you are eating now, when those so-called traditional dishes first came out, they were also a kind of modern cuisine. Going a step further, in ancient times when humans ate raw meat, you roasted the meat over fire and ate it, which was modernization. Those cheap steamed buns sold in canteens were a very impressive technology before 2000. So, traditional food is all molecular gastronomy of the past. I fully agree with this concept. It is really necessary for a chef to accept modern and technologically advanced molecular cuisine, but for now, molecular cuisine tends to focus too much on the changes brought about by technology, while ignoring the essence of cuisine. In short, when can you make molecular cuisine as exciting as this shenglong dumpling dish, which is both shocking and delicious, then the value and charm of modern cuisine can be truly brought into play. Innovation, sometimes, they are regarded as heretics. From raw meat to barbecued meat, from flour to steamed buns, these are all advancements in cooking techniques, but it seems that from soup stock to thick soup, chemicals and technology have been used to replace food, so that many people are rejecting it and do not understand it. Therefore, from Zhang Fan's personal understanding, molecular cuisine does still have a long way to go, and of course it is also a challenge for Alice. Zhang Fan, I'm here again. At this moment, when Alice fell into silence and thinking, Nakari Arena, and the haunting Nido Hisako next to her, appeared in the Izakaya again. As soon as she came in, Arena took the initiative to say hello to Zhang Fan, and on that pretty face, the eagerness to taste the food was evident. Perhaps today's Zhang Fan in Miss Arena's mind, it is already very important, right? Nido Hisako, who was following closely behind him, felt a change in Arena and couldn't help but think to himself. Chapter 93. I miss my mother. Arena, are you free tonight? He looked up at Arena, whose eyes were watery. Zhang Fan just nodded slightly as a response to her greeting, and then began to ask questions. I am just free, Arena replied softly, blushing. PFFT, miss, what do you mean by just right? Obviously, it was you who grabbed my hand and said that I wanted to come to the Izakaya quickly to see what new dishes Zhang Fan had. Seeing Arena coquettishly in front of Zhang Fan, Hisako couldn't hold it in any longer and told the truth. Faye. Where do I have it? It's just that I'm too bored today, so I want to come to an Izakaya to have a meal in my free time. Arena's face turned even redder after being disgraced by Hisako in public, and she could only turn her head and glare at her in shame and anger. Seeing this situation, Faye Shasha could only quickly cover her mouth in a sensible manner. Arena, why did you come to the Izakaya too? At this moment, Alice, who had just come to her senses over there, took the initiative to ask. Her voice just broke the awkward atmosphere of the Izakaya, but Arena was shocked for a while. It can be seen from this astonished expression that she never expected that this cousin would arrive at the Izakaya earlier than she did. Alice, I should ask you this question first, right? What's so strange about this? I've long thought that you didn't create that heavenly dumpling dish at all, so I came to the Izakaya early tonight. Alice snorted coldly and replied, you're pretty smart. Come to the Izakaya to find Zhang Fan and ask him to make real shenglong dumplings. Of course Arena understands that with Alice's personality she will definitely not listen to her. Therefore, she borrowed shenglong dumplings cooking and asked her to take the initiative to go to Zhang Fan. After all, for now, only he can truly provide her with some useful opinions and knowledge. I see. Is this another eldest lady of the Nakari family? Next to him, Kobayashi Gentian, who was not interested in Alice at first, finally understood Alice's identity after Irina appeared. Yes, Ringtong-senpai, she is my cousin Alice Nakari. Irina heard this and quickly responded to Ringtong Kobayashi, Senior. Sister? She is also our student from UAU. Alice, on the other hand, was stunned for a moment and began to look at Regent Kobayashi curiously. Don't you know her yet, Senior? Sister is the second seed of our current top 10 in Toyuki, Kobayashi Ringtong. After saying this, Alice couldn't help but widen her eyes with a look of disbelief. Who would have thought that the diner who had been sitting next to her silently drinking wine and eating a bowl of almond tofu would be the second seed of the current top 10, known as the second most important person in Totsuki Academy? No, what's going on in this Izakaya? The first time I came here, I met the second seed of the 89th top 10, and then the second time I came here, I met the second seed of the current top 10. This situation made Alice's back feel cold and she kept looking at the diners around her. Irina, didn't you say you wanted to see what new dishes I had? It's true as you thought, I recently developed a brand new dish. Seeing that Nakari Irina had just sat down, Zhang Fan took the initiative to move over and whispered in her ear. Are there any new dishes? Irina asked back with bright eyes as a girl with a god's tongue. To be honest, she has become more and more inseparable from Zhang Fan's cooking during this time. Then, as before, I will treat you with new dishes, and you will use your god's tongue to taste them and give your final evaluation. Okay, then I'm looking forward to your new dishes. Irina nodded repeatedly. How could she miss this opportunity to be the first to taste Zhang Fan's new cuisine? Okay, then. Just wait a moment. After finishing speaking, Zhang Fan turned back to the cooking table and prepared to cook a new dish. Egg. It was born from a hen. Hens and eggs can be used to cook many dishes, the most representative of which is egg slippery chicken rice, that is, parent-child rice bowl. First prepare a kuchen, as well as mushrooms, green onions, kelp, onions, eggs, mirin, soy sauce, and sugar. Then, remove excess fat and chicken skin from the hen, and cut the onion into thick shreds. Crack the eggs into a bowl, break off the strands of the egg whites, and beat them slightly without breaking them completely, so that the different textures of the egg whites and yolks can be preserved. Then prepare half a bowl of water, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, half a tablespoon of cooking wine, half a tablespoon of sugar, and half a tablespoon of sake. Mix well and set aside. Heat the pot over medium heat and fry the chicken skin down until the skin becomes crispy. This step is just to force out excess oil, not to fry the chicken. Finally, cut the fried chicken into bite-sized pieces and set aside. Pour the previously prepared sauce into a pot and bring to a boil. Add shredded onions, cut the chicken into bite-sized pieces, put it into the pot and cook, skimming off the foam from time to time. Add half of the egg mixture, cover and cook for about half a minute. Add the remaining half of the egg liquid and cook for 10 seconds until it solidifies slightly. At the end, pour it on the hot rice and sprinkle with chopped green onion, and you'll have a fragrant bowl of smooth egg chicken rice. Parent-child rice bowl. Seeing the new dish in front of her, which turned out to be an ordinary parent-child rice bowl, Irina felt a little speechless. Thinking about the shanglong dumplings and reincarnation spring rolls from before. The shock was so strong that every time she thought about it, she would wonder how could there be such amazing food in this world. However, the parent-child rice bowl in front of me. Involuntarily, Irina looked at Zhang Fan with a somewhat resentful look, as if she was waiting for an explanation from him. Do not worry, you will like this bowl of parent-child rice bowl, because it will awaken a character hidden in your heart, which you will face in the future. No, maybe soon, Zhang Fan said mysteriously. Hearing this, Irina could only hold the heavy ceramic bowl in both hands. After looking at the shiny egg chicken rice inside, she could only roll her eyes at Zhang Fan angrily. If she hadn't seen his cooking skills, she would have thrown a dish like this into the trash can without even taking a bite. But in the end, she still chose to believe Zhang Fan, and started to take a mouthful of rice with a small spoon and eat it. Like, it's always two-sided. Although eggs are laid by hens, they are sometimes incompatible with each other. The hen can sacrifice everything for the eggs, but even if she is careful with the eggs, she still has to bump into them. Finally one day, the hen couldn't bear it anymore and separated from the eggs with scars all over her body. Later, the egg began to hatch into a chick, and it gradually began to understand the pain of the hen at that time, but it felt so powerless in the face of the cruel reality. This meal. After swallowing, Irina suddenly looked sad, and finally murmured softly in her mouth, "Mom, I miss my mother." Chapter 94: The Compassion of Mother and Daughter. The golden smooth egg completely covered the rice at the same time. Cheap white onions have a mild taste and a sweet feeling, which adds a sweet aroma to the soup. Just take a simple bite and you can feel that your empty stomach is soothed easily. Maybe being able to taste the deliciousness of mother chicken and baby egg together is the meaning of this dish. Mental abuse from loved ones is the most sad and frustrating thing. Therefore, Irina has never been willing to recall her childhood experiences, but in this bowl of parent-child rice bowl, she still inadvertently thought of her mother, Nagi Nakiri. In fact, people like Irina are always in need of love. Don't forget that Alice always cries and makes a fuss over the smallest things. Especially in the autumn trial of the original book, after she lost to Soma, she just lay on the ground and rolled around, and when she encounters any difficulties, she always looks cold and stubborn, and she never sheds a tear in front of the public. So on the surface, Irina does seem to be much stronger, but this is not the case. Her heart is more fragile than anyone else's. It is precisely because she is too fragile that she is forced to pretend to be strong to disguise herself. Those experiences in childhood taught her how to be forbearing and how to hide all her true thoughts in her heart so as not to expose them to outsiders. In a word, it is really difficult to get along with people like her. However, people who really know Irina, such as Nido Hisako and Zhang Fan, all know that as long as they give her a little love, she can still be easily moved, and she is just a little arrogant, but she is still very kind at heart. And she is not entirely overbearing and unreasonable. As a child, those memories must be a little blurry now, but for Irina, her mother Nakiri Shinichi was lying on the bed due to the power of God's tongue, with a look of pain on her face, which she will never forget. Even though 10 long years have passed, her memory is still fresh, and it feels even more painful every time she thinks about it. Possible at that moment, seeing her mother like this, she understood her destiny, and maybe she would be like her one day in the future. But what should we do? At a young age, she was helpless when faced with this situation. All I can think of is to be obedient, hone my cooking skills, and wait until I can make dishes that conquer God's tongue in the future. Then this problem can be solved. But the world has always been so cruel, and problems will never be solved by her ideas. Finally, the worst tragedy for the entire family after all, it happened on that dark and windy night of that month. Nakiri Shinichi, completely unable to bear the pain caused by God's tongue, chose to run away from home and never returned to Tatsuki Academy. Since then, Irina's life has been missing her mother's company and her mother's love like the ocean. Indeed, as the only special executive officer of WGO, Nakiri Managi is definitely an amazing person and the pride of the entire Nakiri family, but for her daughter Irina, she is not a very good and responsible mother. Just because she didn't want to get rid of the fate of dying on hunger strike, she could abandon her entire family, her daughter, and run away from home. This approach is simply too selfish. Not understand? I really don't understand. Why is she so afraid of death? Is the curse of God's tongue really that terrible? Can the symptom of not being able to eat any food really make life worse than death? Isn't it a relief for her to accept the outcome of hunger strike and die in an open manner? But why did she have to abandon the entire family, have everyone suffer for it? And why did she have to cast a heavy psychological shadow on me for 10 years? Hatred. I really hate her. In an extremely heavy mood, Nakiri Irina slowly finished a whole bowl of steaming egg chicken rice. Immediately afterwards, while she was reminiscing about the taste of parent-child rice bowl, she kept recalling every bit of her childhood in her mind, until the end, Irina's delicate little face began to show pain and discomfort. Strangeness. It stands to reason, Zhang Fan probably doesn't know what happened to our Nakiri family back then, right? Then, why did he use a bowl of rice bowl to awaken the memory of Irina that has been stored in her heart for many years? On the side, seeing Irina like this, Alice turned her attention to Zhang Fan. You must know that when Nakiri Managi ran away from home, a series of chain reactions occurred in the end, leading the commander-in-chief to issue an order prohibiting such things from spreading outside. At that time, she was still very young and still in Tatsuki Academy when getting along with Irina. It may be that the two of them really don't have many friends. In addition, they are both from the same noble background, so the relationship between them is not bad. Later, Irina gradually disliked Alice's cooking. As a result, she still feels very uncomfortable when she thinks about it, and she has always been worried about this matter. Even so, the relationship between the two did not break up, until she went to Northern Europe and began to live apart from Irina. The opportunity to play together was no longer available. But Alice still wrote letters every month and sent them to Tatsuki Academy. At first, she thought that Irina would have a reply after seeing her letter. As a result, She didn't even send a letter back to Northern Europe in these years, and there was no news at all. Such an ending naturally made Alice very angry, thinking that Irina looked down on her cousin, and the boat of friendship capsized unexpectedly. Not long ago she transferred to Tatsuki Academy. It was only from the commander-in-chief that I learned that it was my aunt Nakare Manaji who ran away from home. As a result, Uncle Nakare Thistle couldn't bear this kind of blow, and instead implemented a segregated education for Irina, making Irina's childhood even more unfortunate. At the same time, measures were taken to cut off all contact with the outside world. So in other words, she wrote a lot of letters at that time, but in fact, all of them were intercepted by Nakare Thistle, and none of them could reach Irina's hands, so it dawned on her. And she began to feel a little ashamed. After all, she had misunderstood Irina Nakare all these years, and she felt deep sympathy for her subsequent experiences. Chapter 95. My mother is back? Later, Irina's eyes became hazy, as if tears were about to flow out, but because of her forbearing and pretending to be strong character, she quickly held back her tears. Maybe for Mother Nakare Shinichi she has a kind of hatred, but deep down she still longs to have the love from her mother. Like other people, there were countless nights when she longed to lie in her mother's arms and sleep peacefully, but this kind of thing is a luxury hope for her. After all, finally, she couldn't help but look down at the empty ceramic bowl. At this time, Irina's thoughts couldn't help but become a little complicated. If one day in the future she really meets her mother again, how should she face her? And can the rift between mother and daughter be bridged and repaired? Obviously no one can give a correct answer to these questions. Interesting, an ordinary bowl of parent-child rice bowl, it actually made Irina show such an expression of pain and discomfort, and even almost made her cry in the end. Kobayashi Gentian watched all this quietly, and finally couldn't help but sigh deeply. Is there really any food in this world that can make people cry after eating it? The answer is definitely yes, if it's just pure tears. It's very simple. Many spicy dishes can make many diners cry. There is also a kind of dish itself that has no story and does not evoke any memories, but its power lies in arousing resonance, such as, it is rare and rare, eating it will make you feel guilty, etc. Of course, what resonates more with most people is expensive, thousands of dollars worth of food. For many people, it can really make them cry. In Kobayashi Gentian's eyes, Zhang Fan's cooking itself doesn't have many stories, but his cuisine is definitely the most heartwarming food in the world, often filled with a lot of love. Every time any hungry diner comes to the Izakaya, he will feel a deep sense of happiness from his dishes. In fact, many feelings come from eating. The feelings of drinking coffee and eating skewers together are definitely different. It's like the difference between a circle of friends and old classmates. One shares wealth, and the other shares adversity. Even for someone like Kobayashi Gentian, every time she passes by some restaurants, she can't help but sniff, not to smell the aroma of barbecue, but to miss the classmates she used to eat with. Therefore, she fully believes that Zhang Fan's cooking will affect many people invisibly. It's just that she really can't understand why Zhang Fan would deliberately use cooking to influence Irina again and again. Here, wipe your mouth. There was a grain of rice and oil residue at the corner of Irina's mouth. Zhang Fan suppressed the smile in his heart and quickly took out a clean silk handkerchief. Thank you, Irina's face turned slightly red as she slowly calmed down. Then he quickly took the silk handkerchief from Zhang Fan's hand, and after wiping his mouth gracefully, he heard Zhang Fan say, "How is it?" "This is a bowl of parent-child rice bowl." "Good," Irina said without thinking. "It's just okay. Doesn't it remind you of something?" Zhang Fan crossed his arms in front of his chest, then lowered his head and glanced at Irina. Probably because of his words, she couldn't help but think of Nakare Shinichi in her mind, so that her watery eyes immediately lost their original light and became gloomy. It seemed that whenever she mentioned her mother, her heart would hurt. "Anorexia, is it really that scary?" Irina, who was disappointed, continued softly. "Zhang Fan, on this issue, can you tell me, eat, vomit, eat more, spit up again, imagine sitting on the toilet for the 10th time late at night. My throat felt like fire after vomiting, and the severe pain in my stomach connected to my back and went straight to my heart. Then you really couldn't stand the pain anymore and vowed to eat well tomorrow and promised never to vomit again. But every day that follows, you are still struggling in the cycle of eating and vomiting. So in fact, the pain caused by anorexia is beyond what ordinary people can imagine." Zhang Fan, after taking a deep look at Irina, said calmly, "Even so, my mother should not have run away from home, let alone abandoned me." Listening To Zhang Fan's explanation, Irina still couldn't accept it. In the history of the Nakari family, it is very rare for 2 consecutive generations to have God's tongue, but for this very reason, it stands to reason that Irina should be better able to understand her mother's pain. However, something unexpected happened, and Irina only knew it when she was young. She lost her mother, she lost maternal love, and who could understand the misfortunes of her childhood? It seems you still don't understand. Actually, your mother has already come to Neon Country and has tasted my food at the Izakaya. When I saw her, her physical condition was almost exhausted, and she could only survive on nutrient solution every day. Over the years, the curse of God's tongue has naturally destined her to have a difficult life. She can die instantly, but if you can't find the recipe to conquer God's tongue before she dies, then your fate will be like hers. Therefore, perhaps it was for you that she dragged her frail body away from home and traveled around the world. After all, she can endure the pain caused by God's tongue, or she can kill herself right away, but she definitely doesn't want to watch you make the same mistake again and become the second Shinichi Nakari. Finally, Zhang Fan truthfully told Irina the purpose of making a parent-child rice bowl. Actually, many things have 2 sides. Most people tend to only see ugliness, or only see the beautiful side, but ignore the opposite aspect, and if this knot cannot be completely opened, then Nakari Irina will still have an extremely bad relationship with her mother as in the original work, to the point where they will quarrel whenever they meet. Confused consternation, confused fear. When I heard about Nakari Manaji, it turned out that she had already appeared in the Izakaya. The expression on Irina's face kept changing. She didn't expect that her mother, who is already the special executive officer of the WGO Food Organization, would come back. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96. What should I do if I accidentally fall in love with you? A lot of people, if you want to make your home, choose it near an izakaya. I just want to have a place to take a nap after get off work and relax my nerves after a long day. Compared with ordinary restaurants, izakayas are available late at night under normal circumstances. Zhang Fan's izakaya will definitely provide alcohol and simple food. Of course, when he has free time, he will also chat with diners about family affairs and listen to their stories. Probably because of some of the worries and emotions inside, it is difficult to talk about them when facing family, relatives, friends, etc. But in front of strangers like Zhang Fan, sometimes it is easier to talk about them. I have to admit that you can always see people coming from a group of unrelated strangers in an izakaya. Their chicken soup-like speeches, their dramatist-like optimism, and their empathetic and similar experiences all encourage some people who are at a loss and guide them to do the right thing. As the shop owner, Zhang Fan quietly cooked the food to appease the appetites of the diners, and at the same time gave them the courage to face and overcome difficulties. In short, this is the magic of this izakaya. Time is fleeting. Irina, Hisako, and Alice, they all left the izakaya. In fact, whether it is shenglong dumplings or the bowl of parent-child rice bowl, these dishes are very important to them in this life. Although it will make them feel uneasy, it will even completely change their cognition. But at the same time, it will also force them to think and make changes in their confused lives. At this time, Kobayashi Ringtong, who had not left yet, looked at the super generous platter of teriyaki chicken skewers in front of the table with bright eyes. In the world of gourmet food, kebabs may be late, but they are never absent in Neon Country. Skewers made by cutting various parts of the chicken into bite-sized pieces, skewering them and grilling them are collectively called burn the bird. It is different from the casual and unrestrained skewers sold at roadside stalls. The izakaya roasted bird made by Zhang Fan is more refined and sophisticated, especially in the selection of ingredients. He used a well-known local chicken breed. The bloodline of this kind of chicken is strictly required to be more than 50%, and it also adopts a free-range model. Not only does the stocking density have to be strict, but the number of breeding days must exceed 80 days. That is to say, this kind of wild kun, it has a vast space for activities, so you can run around happily every day. The result is that the meat is firmer, sweeter, and more flavorful than many chickens sold on the market. Of course, having only the best ingredients is not enough. Zhang Fan is also very particular about the process of making roasted birds when threading skewers. Since the taste of chicken is very delicate, the flavor will be greatly reduced if it comes into contact with hands for a long time, so the word quick is important, and the meat skewers are arranged in the order of small, big, medium, small from top to bottom, and are threaded into a skewer of roasted birds. The reason for the arrangement is that the roasted bird is different from the common fire rack roasting in China. The burning method is close fire and strong fire. Not a single chicken eye can walk out of the izakaya completely, and being able to make a whole plate of Japanese skewers may also be the best destination for chicken hearts, chicken livers, chicken meat, chicken thighs with green onions, chicken cartilage, chicken tails, chicken whites, and chicken wings, etc., combined with chopped green onions, egg yolks and seasonings. Different parts of meat have different tastes and textures, which is really enjoyable. I can't help but feel that Kobayashi Gentian is full of aftertaste as a foodie. She didn't have much resistance to these delicious dishes. Only in an izakaya can she truly forget all time and worries and truly experience the happiness brought by food. This smells delicious. Owner, Neon Goel can successfully obtain a 1-star restaurant recognized by WGO just by relying on roasted bird dishes, and the chef of that restaurant is also known as the roasted bird master by the public. I have been there and eaten roasted birds. It is indeed delicious, but when I came back to eat the roasted bird you made today, I realized that the roasted bird he made was nothing. If you ask me, if he is a bird-burning master, then you deserve it, yakitori. Immortal. After biting a bunch of chicken meatballs in his hand, Xiaolin Ringtong quickly said to Zhang Fan with excitement, "Yakitori. Immortal. What? Nonsense tattle." Hearing this, Zhang Fan felt a little ashamed and couldn't help but roll his eyes at her. Thanks to cooking movies and TV series such as The Lonely Gourmet and Midnight Diner, this kind of roasted bird that can maintain the image of common people's cuisine in the hearts of the people of Neon Country has indeed become popular quickly. The roasted bird that is a delicacy at the stall has won a WGO star, and it is also the highest level 1 star, which is really incredible. But under the wind caused by bird burning, there is also a lot of chaos. The most typical one is that this 1-star yakiniku restaurant actually offer chicken sashimi, although for the Neon people who can sashimi everything, chicken sashimi may not be unacceptable to many people. But as mentioned before, those famous varieties are concentrated in the Kagoshima and Miyazaki areas of Kyushu. Therefore, cases of food poisoning caused by bacterial infection caused by eating chicken sashimi occur every year. Tell the truth, shopkeeper. Zhang, your roasted bird is really great, from detail skills, fire control, to the selection and processing of ingredients. I dare say that the bird roasting master is completely surpassed in every aspect. While chewing the roasted bird, I also sipped a sip of authentic shizuoka sake, the aroma of meat and the aroma of fresh fruit. These two fascinating flavors slowly flow from the mouth into the heart and spleen. On one side are broken and fleeting worries, on the other side is contented, pure and warm happiness. Obviously, in this artistic conception, Kobayashi Gentian would not worry about how much the super generous plate of roasted bird in front of him would cost, because this experience is destined to be priceless. Oh, what a pleasure! Slowly exhaling the breath of alcohol, Kobayashi Ringtong finally couldn't help but sigh. Then she raised her head slightly, her golden eyes flickered a few times, and she began to stare deeply at Zhang Fan in front of her. Why are you looking at me like that again? It makes my heart pound. What should I do if I accidentally fall in love with you? Feeling that Xiaolin Gentian's eyes were always looking at him, Zhang Fan chuckled. Kobayashi Ringtong quickly looked away. A trace of blush appeared on his pretty face, and said softly, "Just take a look at you and see how beautiful you are." Chapter 97. Zhang Fan, I really can't survive. Please give it to me quickly. Sky. It gradually darkened again. A large piece of chicken leg meat is particularly smooth and tender, and the grilled green onions are not soft at all. You can occasionally taste the spiciness in the green onions. Similar to the division of beef, chickens are also finely divided by Neon people. In addition to the common chicken breasts, chicken legs, chicken livers, chicken combs, chicken gizzard skin, and even the chicken sleeves where the chicken wings are connected to the chicken breasts, they will be specially divided and used for roasting the bird. Shopkeeper, I am now a third-year student in the Department of Higher Education. I should be able to graduate successfully in another year. By then I think I would like to apply for a job as a cook at your izakaya. Is that okay? Afterwards, I continued to eat the Kobayashi Gentian with roasted bird. A trace of uneasiness flashed across his face, and he asked with some expectation but also some pride. She had always been very confident about her own strength, but she felt inferior in front of Zhang Fan. What are you going to work at an izakaya? Zhang Fan was stunned for a moment, then came back to his senses and understood what she meant. Cook, this matter will be affected by many factors. Therefore, if the chef's strength is specifically quantified into 5 dimensions, namely, initial talent, theoretical knowledge, on-the-spot experience, psychological quality and special skills, then Ringtone Kobayashi, who represents the second seed of Tatsuki's current top 10, can be said to be an all-around genius in the plot of the original work. Although the struggle between her and Si Yingxi in the selection of this 10 elites was not directly depicted, but just because she is in the second seat does not necessarily prove that she is the second best, just like in the 69th session. Jin Dojima in the first seat may not be better than Joichiro Seiba in the second seat. Thinking from Zhang Fan's perspective, the Izakaya he runs will definitely continue to expand and scale in the future, and slowly develop into a place that can completely change the era of cooking. Of course, for now this goal is still far away and cannot be achieved overnight, but it is undeniable that during the entire process, it would be difficult to achieve and maintain it just by relying on his own strength, not to mention anything else. Just talking about the continued booming business of the Izakaya, it has gradually become too much for him. It is estimated that Zhang Fan will have to recruit assistants to help him run this Izakaya soon. Zio Lin isn't. There's still a year to go. It may be a little early for you to make this request in front of me. Maybe before graduation, there will be a sudden coup in Yuanyu, and then you will almost fall from the position of top 10. You can't say. After taking a deep look at Zio and Gentian, Zhang Fan could only shrug and replied softly, "So, you don't agree?" Hearing these words, Kobayashi Gentian was inevitably a little disappointed. Her unusual expression did not escape Zhang Fan's eyes, which surprised him a little. After all, with Kobayashi Ritsuo's own talents and talents, famous restaurants, hotels, etc. will be competing with each other wherever he can apply for a job after graduation, but she was obsessed with her own Izakaya. He didn't understand what kind of charm he had, which was worthy of her paying for it so stupidly, but seeing her determination, Zhang Fan couldn't help but feel very happy. Don't think blindly. Izakaya will definitely need talent like you in the future, so what I mean is that I will always have a position to help the kitchen. Whether it is 1 year or 2 years, I will be waiting for you to come to work here at any time. Why, really, then it's a deal. Don't go back on your word, shopkeeper. After saying that, Xiaolin Ringtong made a gesture in front of Zhang Fan that he wanted to pull the hook and make a promise. Still a 3-year-old, you just can't trust my character, Zhang Fan, right? Seeing this, Zhang Fan couldn't laugh or cry, but in the end, he still stretched out his little finger to hook her up, and the two finally formed a verbal agreement. 12 o'clock late at night, it's finally time for the Izakaya to close. Although there are still many things he wants to say to Zhang Fan at this time, the sensible Kobayashi Regent knows that the future is long, so he keeps these words in his heart for the time being. Then, she paid the bill and reluctantly left the Izakaya. At this moment, looking at her leaving figure, Zhang Fan, who was preparing to close the shop over there, couldn't help but sigh deeply. Think about it in the future if Tatsuki students such as Kobayashi Ritsuo, Akane Kubo Momo, Tagoko, Yoshino Yuki, Sakaki Ryoko, etc. all work in his Izakaya, and then work for himself to make money. Although wishes are always good, reality may not be so satisfying, but if you think about it carefully, if you work harder, you should still be able to do such a beautiful thing, right? At last, Zhang Fan, please sort out your complicated emotions. Then he turned around and continued to work, getting ready to close the shop. Shopkeeper, quick, hurry up and help. Unexpectedly, just when he turned around, En, who was in a hurry, actually supported the extremely weak Nakari Manaji and broke into the Izakaya. Hearing such an anxious voice behind him, Zhang Fan frowned slightly and quickly turned his head to look back. It doesn't matter if you don't see the result. I was almost shocked when I saw it, but it was obvious that Nakari Shinichi was trembling all the time. Her face was extremely flushed, and she was sweating hotly, looking extremely weak. After seeing Zhang Fan, her gloomy eyes suddenly brightened up as if she had seen hope. However, due to her weak physical strength, the heavy dizziness began to hide her head again involuntarily. Even with Annie's support, she fell back softly and unconsciously. Seeing this situation, Zhang Fan made a whoosh sound and rushed directly to Nakari Manaji's side, holding her firmly. Then, he led her to the seat and couldn't help but reach out to cover her forehead. Hot. It's really hot. It was so hot that he could only quickly retract his hand and said, "What's going on? Didn't she eat comet fried rice? Her physical condition should be improved, but why is it like this?" "I'm not too sure either," Perhaps her anorexia has returned again. I can't make ends meet, and Nakari Shinichi started to rub his temples with his hands. It seemed as if there were a few stones in his head. It made a rattling sound, not to mention how uncomfortable it was, of course. What was even more uncomfortable was that her whole body was so hot that her face was flushed, and all she could think about was Zhang Fan's cooking. No, I really can't do it anymore. Zhang Fan, hurry, give it to me quickly, give it to me quickly. Use the last bit of strength in your body so that you can barely stand up immediately. Nakari Shinichi grabbed Zhang Fan's arm tightly with both hands, and pink love appeared in his eyes again. Chapter 98: A good medicine for treating food addiction. The thinnest dish is born. Food addiction is a disease just like taking drugs. Delicious food also stimulates the brain to secrete a chemical called dopamine, which makes people feel happy. Then, in order to continue to obtain this pleasure, you will keep craving for food under normal circumstances. You will feel full after eating, which is of course a kind of satisfaction, but the experience brought by certain foods can sometimes exceed the feeling of fullness, and as a result, you will continue to eat even if you are not hungry. If people who are addicted to gambling are unable to control the temptation of money, then people with bulimia are unable to control their desire for food. In short, in the past, Nagi Nakari was extremely averse to cooking, but it was precisely this mentality that caused her to become obsessed with Zhang Fan's cooking. Are you addicted to my cooking? But now that the Izakaya has just closed, I may not be able to make comet fried rice with a few ingredients left. Knowing that her symptoms were caused by missing his own cooking too much, Zhang Fan could only sigh softly and said quietly, listening to his helpless words. Nakari Shinichi's heart began to be surrounded by fear and despair. Her patience has almost reached its limit. If she can't taste Zhang Fan's cooking again, then she will really go crazy because of this. I beg you, I've been in pain for most of my life. Now that I have finally found the recipe to break the curse of God's tongue, I really don't want to give up. Zhang Fan, just make some more dishes for me to taste, so that I can get that unprecedented pleasure. Otherwise I really can't stand it anymore. Nakari Shinichi, with love still in her eyes, pleadingly and expectantly said to Zhang Fan, "What? So it's food addiction?" Anne on the side was slightly startled. This well-informed executive must have some knowledge in this area. In her understanding, because everyone's genes and health status are different, their tendency to become addicted to food is also slightly different. Generally speaking, many people are more likely to become addicted to foods high sugar, salt, and fat, but this was the first time in her life that she had seen such extreme symptoms as Shinichi Nakari. And who would have thought that, deeply affected by the curse of God's tongue, Nakari Shinichi was originally the person who hated cooking the most in the world, but now, she suffers from food addiction, and is even more obsessed with and dependent on Zhang Fan's cooking than anyone else. At the same time, in order to taste Zhang Fan's cooking again, he became so humble. Originally, the special kitchen tool Beichan Xianlang blade is needed to bring out the real flavor, but the situation has come to a point where we can only use an ordinary kitchen knife to cook that dish. Looking at Shinichi's pleading eyes, Zhang Fan could only make up his mind. After thinking for a moment after that, he quickly turned around and returned to the cooking table and couldn't help but look forward to seeing him cooking again to treat Nakari Shinichi's food addiction this time. What kind of food will this mysterious shop owner make? Speaking of food, indeed, it can always arouse people's truest desires. Since leaving the Nakari family, Nakari Shinichi has been traveling around the world. Everywhere she goes directly to the local specialties, constantly using the power of God's tongue to taste the most authentic flavors. For her, who is eager to find the food to conquer God's tongue, the attraction of delicious food must be far greater than the beautiful scenery. It is undeniable that she has tasted many delicious dishes in the world over the years, so she has a better understanding of a food. If you want to feel its unique flavor, you especially need to eat it in the correct way. Only in this way can you fully appreciate the deliciousness that food should have. Unfortunately, due to the curse of God's tongue, she eventually lost interest in all the food in the world, but that love for gourmet cooking is actually still hidden in her heart. Therefore, after learning that Zhang Fan once again wanted to cook for himself and cure his severe food addiction, Nakari Shinichi couldn't help but be filled with gratitude. Boom! A huge snapper. Zhang Fan threw it onto the chopping board, making a violent sound immediately afterwards. He took out the slicing knife from the Quizhitian kitchen utensil set and swung the knife down quickly. Brush, 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 but I saw that his knife skills were as fast as when he used to handle Wensi tofu. No, probably even faster, as he kept cutting. The slices of sashimi cut from the sea bream were like transparent paper, as thin as cicada wings. If you take a closer look, these sashimi look like light and thin leaves. It kept drifting left and right, and slowly fell towards the hill made of ice blocks next to it. What happened? The last time I made wensi tofu, the knife skills were enough to surprise me, but the knife skills used in this sea bream sashimi dish are actually faster and more powerful than the last time. Each knife may seem messy, but it can accurately cut the parts of the sea bream. In just a short period of time, the pieces of sea bream meat were cut so thin that they looked like transparent paper. This level of shock is not inferior to the last time I cut a whole block of tofu into thin tofu shreds. Wensi tofu comet fried rice. These are two dishes that Anne has seen at the Izakaya. There is no doubt that these two dishes deeply shocked her, but it wasn't until this moment that she fully understood that there was never a shortage of excellent chefs in this world. But when it comes to the level of knife skills, I'm afraid no one can beat Zhang Fan. Why? Etc. Why? Do those cut sashimi pieces fall so slowly? Then, the shocked Annie quickly thought of something. She looked at the leaf-like sashimi, many of which were still floating in the air, and couldn't help but cover her mouth in surprise. Thin, too thin, probably because the sashimi is sliced very thin. In addition, the rapid waving of his arms created a small wind force around him, which kept blowing. Therefore, there is this strange scene of sashimi floating left and right in midair and slowly falling on the iceberg. Horrible. It's really scary. Why is it that this shop owner Zhang always cooks so shockingly? Is there really no flaw in his cooking? Nothing worth complaining about. Finally, pieces of sashimi that looked like dragon phosphorus finally fell down, completely covering the entire surface of the iceberg. Chapter 99, Becoming an Immortal. Whoosh, bang bang bang. At the moment when the sashimi completely covered the iceberg, a dazzling yellow light appeared. Even though this was the second time Nakari Shinichi and Anne saw glowing dishes in an izakaya, they still felt shocked immediately afterwards. The whooshing cold wind began to spread around and hot Nakari Manaji, who was very close at hand. It was chilly, and it became even more bone-chilling toward the back, instantly blowing away all the heat from her body. Gradually, her mood was affected by this dish and slowly stabilized. Okay, this is a new dish that can compete with comet fried rice, strong and fresh sea bream. However, due to the problem with the kitchen knife, this dish can only be regarded as an incomplete version for the time being. But I think this incomplete version of the strong and fresh sea bream cuisine should be more than enough to conquer your god's tongue and cure your food addiction. After taking back the kitchen knife, Zhang Fan took a deep breath and said calmly, crystal clear, shiny, those snapper sashimi clinging to little icebergs. Although the light has faded at this time, the crystal pink color can still be seen under the light. Top-level sashimi is actually cut on the spot. After all, only fresh meat can achieve a mouthful of flavor coupled with a live cutting knife skills performance. The diners will be amazed and impressed. However, the time it took Zhang Fan from removing the water to cooking, setting the plate, and serving the food did not exceed 5 minutes. That is to say, 1 second. The snapper was still in the tank. The next second, the fresh sashimi fell quietly on the iceberg, ready to be eaten by Manaji Nakari. Perhaps this is what snapper is destined to do. What a nice view. If you hadn't seen it with your own eyes, I really can't imagine and believe that there are such beautiful dishes in this world. The light rippling feeling, the slices of sashimi clinging to the cold icebergs like transparent paper. The scene is simply too majestic. I'm afraid, from an artistic point of view, it will definitely surpass many professional ice sculpture artists. Looking at the plate of hot and fresh sea bream dishes that had just been completed, Annie was so shocked that she couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. Sakura among the flowers, snapper among fish. In the neon country, snapper is the true representative of tranquility and heat, and if there is only one type of fish that represents the elegance of traditional fish dishes, it must be snapper. And this so-called hot and fresh sea bream pushed that temperament to the highest level, and it also made Anne, a first-class executive officer, couldn't help but marvel. Looking at the whole world, only Zhang Fan can create such a dish. However, next to Nakari Shinichi, his thoughts became more complicated. Theoretically speaking, all kinds of ingredients are ever-changing and have their own physical properties. Only by first understanding the physical properties of ingredients can we grasp the original flavor of the ingredients. As for the good taste of ingredients, there are usually two types. One is simple. The principle is that the original taste of the ingredients is very good and perfect. When you eat it, you will know, oh, this is the taste of spring shepherd's purse, this is the taste of summer shepherd's purse, this is the taste of Chinese cabbage, this is the taste of baby cabbage, this is the taste of yam. The original flavors of these ingredients are very pure, so if you use too many seasonings, it will look very messy and mixed, which will destroy the good taste of these ingredients. The other type is that the ingredients have their own taste and have distinct advantages and disadvantages, such as the smell of mutton and the smell of fish. They have defects, and these defects need to be removed. To put it bluntly, the strengths of the ingredients must be used to avoid their weaknesses. This is to use seasonings to balance and coordinate. The more prominent the personality, the more balance and coordination is required, but, no matter what kind of food it is, if it cannot be cooked, it is absolutely impossible to conquer God's tongue just by relying on its original taste. After all, Manaji is now so serious that he even rejects the most cherished white sturgeon caviar. Therefore, could a mere sashimi of real sea bream, without any processing, really satisfy her God's tongue? But if Zhang Fan could use the original taste of the ingredients, he could conquer God's tongue just like Comet fried rice did last time. Then there is no doubt that his own strength must be far beyond Shiniji's previous knowledge. What are you doing standing still? Eat quickly. There is no such thing as the beech and serious blade to preserve the freshness of the sea bream, so the taste is already a lot worse. If you don't eat it now, and the temperature of the ice cubes gradually rises, the freshness of the sea bream meat will continue to be lost, and it will taste unpalatable by then. You can't blame me for not warning you. Seeing that Nakiri Shiniji was dumbfounded, Zhang Fan couldn't help but urge, I'll eat right away and start right away. After a moment of recovery, Nakiri Manaji lightly twisted a piece of transparent raw sea bream meat with chopsticks, and then slowly ate it. On the one hand, sashimi pursues the original flavor of the ingredients, so the seasoning based on the ingredients is very simple and relies on the ingredients and knife skills. Even the slight difference brought by the knife skills is obvious in the high-quality ingredients. On the other hand, Chinese cuisine also has extremely high requirements for knife skills. Therefore, the most important aspect of this fiercely chilled sea bream is definitely the taste of the sea bream itself, but since it lacks the blessing of beech and Cheyenne blade, it can only be made up for by knife skills. As soon as he entered, Nakiri Manaji was stunned on the spot, completely unable to move, like a stone, fresh, tender, sweet, at the same time. I felt very cold. The entire tongue comes alive under the influence of various flavors and textures. The tender fish meat elasticity and the particularly cold feeling could not disappear even if Nakiri Shiniji kept chewing it with his teeth, especially every time I bite the sashimi in my mouth. The extremely delicious taste is like a bomb, exploding quickly with bang bang bang. Such a feeling caught her completely off guard, and also made her feel the purest smell of sea bream. After, with the temperature in your mouth as the cold sea bream meat continued to warm, an unprecedented feeling emerged. What's going on with this feeling? Involuntarily, Nakiri Shiniji, who was chewing slowly and carefully, finally reacted, and his eyes widened with an expression of disbelief. Afterwards, when she swallowed it, the softened sea bream meat entered her stomach smoothly like a dragon returning to the sea. And the blood in her body seemed to be burning, making her feel hot again. It's so cool. This kind of a cuisine actually makes me experience something I've never experienced before. At this moment, Nakiri Shiniji felt a little floating all over, as if a jealous and ashamed fairy began to fly away from the world and ascend to the fairyland. Chapter 100. How I want Zhang Fan to be by my side. Call. Suddenly, there was a strong wind just when Nakiri Shiniji's consciousness was empty. The teaching pulse burst out again, but this strong wind came and disappeared quickly. When everything returned to tranquility, the sea bream sashimi attached to the iceberg was eaten by Nakiri Manaji bite after bite. Do not know why this is a simple sashimi dish. It seemed as if there was a power that could control people's hearts, quickly trapping her, Nakiri Manaji, so that she could never escape, so much so that right now, all she could think about was leaping fresh sea bream mountain. Finally, at a speed visible to the naked eye, all the sea bream meat was completely destroyed. Zhang Fan, can we have another round? Nakiri Nagi smacked his lips and said to Zhang Fan with unfinished thoughts. Obviously, this amount is not enough to fill her stomach, let alone completely satisfy her God's tongue. Hold on. Zhang Fan just nodded and continued working. After that, Nakiri Manaji, who had a huge appetite, actually ate 3 plates of strong chilled sea bream in the Izakaya. To be honest, the unprecedented feeling of fullness and the delicious taste of the sea bream made her feel unforgettable all the time, and next to her couldn't help but look shocked when she saw Nakiri Manaji eating so much. After all, it was unprecedented for her to be able to conquer God's tongue so much just by relying on the original taste of the ingredients, even allowing her to eat 3 entire plates of sea bream. Nowadays many restaurants are adding other seasonings with strong flavors. The purpose may be to make diners addicted and find the food delicious. But this approach inevitably interferes with the nature of the food at the same time. If you want to highlight the umami taste, you will need higher costs. It's not as spicy as the low-cost ones, which can mask the freshness of inferior ingredients. It is not like the sweetness outside the main meal, which can be separated from the main link of the formal dining table and become a separate embellishment. Therefore, to a certain extent, the difficulty of conquering God's tongue is higher than the last time comet fried rice, a strong chilled Asian dish full of fresh ingredients, but the reality is right in front of him. Just by relying solely on the taste of the sea bream, Zhang Fan can achieve the level of satisfaction that Nakari Manaji has. Moreover, she was even asked to dry 3 large plates of sea bream sashimi. I take back what I said last time. Even if God's tongue continues to evolve, I'm afraid it still won't be able to surpass your cooking. If you ask me, maybe it's you, the owner of the Izakaya, who really represents the ceiling of strength in the food industry, not me, Nakari Manaji. Finally, after eating and drinking enough, Nakari Shinichi finally got rid of her food addiction temporarily, and her complexion gradually returned to normal. Then she turned her attention to Zhang Fan and saw him picking up a clean knife cloth and carefully wiping the kitchen knife that had just been used to handle the snapper. Looking carefully, his eyes were so soft and focused. Do you understand now? No matter how your God's tongue evolves, it will only be obsessed with my cooking. What you have to worry about in the future is no longer going on a hunger strike because of your rejection of food, but how to get rid of the food I cook. Upon hearing this, Zhang Fan just wiped the clean slicing knife and placed it again in the knife box. Then, he raised his head slightly and looked at Nakari Shinichi, who was watching him silently. Well, food addiction, it's scary, but it's better to be stretched to death than to starve to death. Nakari Shinichi naturally understood what Zhang Fan meant and couldn't help but reply with emotion yes. Rather than hating all food, being able to rely heavily on the cooking made by one person and being able to develop food addiction is exactly what Nakari Shinichi wants to pursue most in her life. It's just as Zhang Fan said, just in case you become addicted to his cooking, it happens that he is not here, or like tonight, due to lack of ingredients, he almost failed to make a dish for himself to taste. So what should he do? Zhang Fan, WGO Food Organization will hold the Blue World Class Cooking Competition soon. We are still short of some manpower, so do you want to come to our place? With your ability, there is absolutely no problem in serving as a special executive officer of WGO like me, or as an assessor in charge of the blue competition. I appreciate your kindness. Currently, I have no interest in anything related to Tatsuki Academy or the WGO Food Organization. Seeing that Nakari Shina actually invited him to WGO, Zhang Fan was stunned, and then he refused without thinking. Tatsuki Academy. So, you have also rejected your father, knowing that he was not even interested in Tatsuki Academy. Nakari Shinichi had nothing to say. Geniuses inevitably have some puzzling shortcomings, and a super genius like Zhang Fan clearly possesses what Shina Nakari considers to be the strongest cooking skills in the world. But in the end he only wants to run this small and medium-sized Izakaya. Well, his thoughts and actions would indeed make you laugh or cry, but from Nakari Shinichi's perspective, it deserves your awe. If every chef in the world could be like Zhang Fan, how could I be disappointed with the entire culinary world? You actually have no intention of working for the WGO Food Organization, so I certainly can't force you any. Pay the bill. Finally, Nakari Shinichi couldn't help but retract his gaze, then stood up to leave, but the moment she turned around, she paused and couldn't help but turn back and take a deep look at Zhang Fan. Zhang Fan, you are really an excellent chef. I appreciate you more and more. After saying that, she left without looking back behind her. Annie, after paying the bill, hurriedly followed Nakari Manaji and left the Izakaya together. Night, deeper, the moonlight was dim, and the street lights on both sides of the road were twinkling, adding a bit of brightness to the calm and peaceful night. Samaji-sama, the blue competition, if not brought forward, will not be held until the end of next year. Moreover, there is no shortage of manpower at present, so why did you invite Zhang Fan? Annie, who is acting as the driver, asked in confusion while driving. Is there a problem? I just want to trick him into going to WGO. After all, as long as he's by my side, I can taste his cooking every day. After saying that, Nakari Shinichi's face was filled with a happy smile. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.